It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We have a great panel for you. Glenn Fleischman is here. Dwight Silverman, formerly of the Chronicle, and a CEO who knows a lot, Mr. Phil Libin, one of the founders of Evernote and the creator of the app with a crazy name. We'll talk about what's going on at Twitter. Phil has some calming words for us. Elizabeth Holmes gets 11 years in federal prison. Is that too much? And we now know the Earth weighs 6 ronnagrams. What's a ronnagram? Stay tuned and find out. Twit is next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 902, recorded Sunday, November 20th, 2022. May contain nuts. This Week in Tech is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes it easy to hire for even the most specific role, like, a mascot in Missouri. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers find a quality candidate within the first day. Try it free today at ZipRecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And by Nareva. Nareva has simplified everything about meetings and classroom audio. You get great audio and systems that are easy to install and manage. Visit nareva.com/twit and get 50% off one Nareva HDL300 system for mid-sized rooms when you get a live online demo and buy before December 16th, 2022. And by Wealthfront. Visit wealthfront.com/twit to get started and get your free $50 bonus with an initial deposit of $500. That's wealthfront.com/twit. And by ExpressVPN. Protect yourself with the VPN that I use and trust. Use expressvpn.com/twit today, and you'll get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. And as Phil said, there's not much to talk about this week. Phil Libin is here. It's great to have him. Love Phil. First became aware of him when he was founder and CEO of one of my all-time favorite note-taking apps, Evernote. He has since moved on. He is now the co-founder and CEO of All Turtles, which is, an AI kind of proving ground. The app with the name MMHMM that he's using right now to be flying in his private jet. Hi, Phil.
Hey, Leo. Nice to be with you.
It's great to have you on the show. Always welcome. I brought you on this week because, of course, Evernote is in the news, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. I'd like to get your take. But then there's many other things I want to talk to you about. Of course, you've run companies. You know what it's like to take over a company. To have technical infrastructure, have technical debt. I want to know what you think of what's going on at Twitter. And because you were born in the Soviet Union and have Ukrainian family, I'd love to hear your thoughts about all of that. So we have lots to talk about.
All the fun topics. All right.
Yeah, sorry. I'll throw some. We'll do something silly. We'll throw something silly. That's Glenn Fleischman. He's in charge of fun here at the network. We love seeing Glenn. Glenn.fun is his website. You see him on MacBreak Weekly. You see him on our Mastodon, where he is a great contributor. Hi, Glenn.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Always a
for this boring week. This week in which nothing whatsoever happened.
Nothing.
Anywhere in technology.
Nothing.
We'll find something to talk about.
So slow. And a dear friend who's been with us for many, many years. I remember talking to you when the iPad came out. How many years ago is that? Dwight Silverman. Many years at the Houston Chronicle. He ran a radio show out of Texas for a long time. He's at authory.com/dsilverman. That's where all of his work goes, and there's quite a bit of it. Good to see you, Dwight.
And it's really good to be here.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to talking this week because, as Phil said, it's a slow news week, and we get a chance to make stuff up this week, and I'm all about that.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. We should have had a vote. I mean, holy cow. Let's do a Twitter poll. So you said the word Twitter, might as well do it. Donald Trump is back on the Blue Bird. Not that he said anything. In fact, in a way, I don't know if he should be too glad he's back because The tweets are the last tweets he made on January 6th. Somewhat incriminating, maybe. He has said that he's going to stay on his own site, Truth Social. But this is the latest thing that Elon did that is kind of contradictory to something he said earlier. He said we're going to have a panel of experts to approve the return and departure of people. And then, forget that. Let's have a poll. As many have pointed out, that poll is easily gamed. Somebody said, well, now we know what the GRU wants. Although, I got to say, it was surprisingly close. I thought it would be overwhelmingly in favor of bringing back the former president. So much has happened. Twitter is the gift that keeps on giving. Although I saw Mike Maples Jr. Kind of snappishly, maybe you saw this too, Phil, on Twitter saying to one of the, I think it was to Casey Newton of Platformer, who's been covering this, doing a very good job. He's got a lot of sources in Twitter, saying, why don't you cover something more productive than the demise of Twitter? I think this is a bigger story. This is a real news story, isn't it? Or is it just a soap opera? Phil?
I mean, it's both. I am not expecting the demise of Twitter out of this. There's more drama than is probably strictly necessary. But yeah, it's been interesting to watch. It's definitely maximizing for my entertainment.
It is entertaining. It was very sad on Twitter on Friday night when the news came that this was Elon's deadline for engineers to either go hardcore or go home, and he put out a form, a Google form, oddly enough, that somebody should check saying, yes, I'm willing to go hardcore with you, or no, I'll take my 3-month severance now. I imagine we don't know what the actual response, although the New York Times is reporting and KC News is reporting about 1,100 engineers took advantage of that 3-month severance. I think that's the sensible thing to do, but it's not binding. I imagine a large number of people just said, I don't have to answer that. I'm just going to come to work.
Is anybody left there who could fire them? That's the question. I was reading, I think the New York Times had one of the anecdotes they had was a woman roaming around the building for 2 days because her manager had been fired to try to give notice. And she finally found her new manager, gave notice, and then that manager was fired the next day or left. So it does have a kind of Keystone Cops, Marx Brothers, Fellini vibe. Like there's just a lot of stuff happening all at once, and some of it's farce and some of it's overwhelming.
And some of it's rumor that is probably not provably true. For instance, there was a confirmed story that badge access was turned off on Friday, and then nobody could go in. Nobody's going to be able to go in until Monday. But Elon at 1:20 on Saturday morning posted a picture of him going beast mode with the remaining engineers. It's a small group, and there's only a few women, mostly guys. This is what's left, Elon inside. This is his so-called code review. He was telling, bring 10 screenshots of your code. This is what he posted on his Twitter. It doesn't look like code. It looks like they're telling him how Twitter works at this point.
Yeah. Also, I wonder when he disabled card key access, was he trying to keep people in or keep them out? I wasn't sure.
Supposedly, the rumor was that the card key access ended because the whole team that managed it was gone.
That was a tweet from a prankster, by the way.
Yes, right.
And the prankster said nobody can get out, so they had to call me back in. But of course, card keys don't work that way. They keep people out, not keep people in. You'd have a fire code violation if you couldn't get out.
The deadline was Thursday.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and supposedly the form that you went to when you clicked on his link was simply yes.
Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, interesting.
Yes, and the people who didn't click yes were presumed to have
by default
put
that's
in their
no
resignation.
Wow.
Right.
So
and that's how it worked.
You've run technical teams, Phil.
Yeah, still am.
How do engineers take to this kind of thing?
Look, I think Elon's always been an outlier, and Twitter's an outlier, and there's not that much that we can learn from really studying, outliers. Like by definition, most things don't behave like this. Most companies don't run like this. I think it's hard to predict how it's going to go. Other than, look, at the end of the day, like it's a website. they're going to figure it out. This isn't the hardest thing that Elon's like built. I'm pretty sure they're going to get it right. Again, there's going to be a lot more drama than I would have liked to see, and a lot of people's lives get kind of turned upside down, or at least add a lot of uncertainty around who gets, around jobs. So it's drama, it's theater. But I think people like predicting that this is the end of Twitter. I don't know. I mean, maybe, right? Hard to know the future, but I'm certainly not expecting it to.
I don't think a lot of people said, "Oh, it's only a matter of time before the website fails." First of all, you design it to keep going. Even if everybody walked out of the building, it would keep going for some time. Yeah, you're right. I don't see this as the end of Twitter. Maybe the bigger question is the end of content moderation. For a while, people were posting full-length Hollywood movies on Twitter. They fixed that, by the way. The crew that was taking that stuff down either arrived or finally noticed.
Yeah, I got to strongly disagree on the technical side, not because I have magic insight into Twitter's code base, but every report that's come out of there from people who've left recently, and many people in the past, is that they have an incredibly fragile infrastructure that they've barely been able to keep alive for years, and that there's so much accumulated technical debt without working on core restructuring, refactoring, all the rest of it to keep it more reliable. Mudge, who was the engineer who left and became a whistleblower, he said that thing about, which makes a lot of sense, is that there's so many services that depend on each other. If there were actually a complete temporary collapse of the systems, everything had to be shut down, basically power cycle everything, then they might not be able to bring it back up because some services are dependent on other things running, and if those aren't running, they can't come up. So I don't want to predict doom, but when you get 75 or 80% of the people at a company are gone, they're running their own data center operations for the most part, which is unusual for a company of that particular scale and with those kind of operations. There's so much that could easily go wrong, and the person who knows how to fix it is nowhere in sight. So I don't think it's necessary that the site just goes down as, entropy and that they can't fix things, but that there may simply be too many plates spinning that all crash to the ground at once and they can't catch them.
There may be, or it may be okay.
Well, I mean, I think it's optimal. When if you fired 80% of your staff, could you keep everything running on an operation that serves hundreds of millions of people and is got all of these conflicting regulatory and other? I mean, they've got regulatory burdens to meet, they have technical burdens to meet, they run their own infrastructure.
Right.
I guess that's a good question: is which is going to be the first to go? Is it going to be the content layer or the technical layer? The content's going to be tough. You've got, as you said, and I think Elon underestimated how many different countries he was going to have to appease, many of which he does business in with Tesla. That's going to be a real challenge for him. He also seems to have a failing common among some billionaires that he seems to be very hands-on. And I little bit worry that, when he says we're going to turn off 80% of microservices.
That's it. Yeah.
That there's no one there to say, Elon, that's a bad idea, and here's why. Yoel Roth, for a long time, Jeff Jarvis was saying, well, it's not going to be too bad because Yoel Roth is there, head of trust and safety. He's not. Mm-hmm. In fact, he wrote a piece on the New York Times. He was very judicious, I think.
Yeah.
But he said they don't need a head of trust and safety because Elon is making the decisions now. In other words, it's not a democracy. He doesn't have advisors. It's Elon. And he says, well, you don't need me anymore because I got nothing to say about anything. And they may be, and I know probably this was another story, was that some engineers were worried about long-term liability if they stuck around and had no power to counter Elon's worst impulses.
But, okay, so look, I don't remember a previous time where so many people have actively and gleefully wanted a company to.
That's a good point, and there is a very much of that,
and so publicly.
Yeah,
and many of the people who wanted to fall apart also wanted to stay and not fall apart. You can have both of those ideas in your head at the same time. Twitter Twitter in the long term has been one of the companies that's really, I think, forced our society and our discourse to become maximalized, to become all about like exaggerating conflict. Twitter has helped like professional wrestling eyes most of our conversations. I don't think they've been as guilty of this as Facebook. I think Facebook has been worse. But Twitter certainly contributed to that. And, a few years ago, Jack decided, hey, this is bad. And so they're going to focus on healthy conversations, and they try to figure out how to tone down. And they were, successful to some extent. But it's appropriate. Like Twitter, the company that made everything into high drama, is now experiencing high drama.
What a surprise.
but
Hoist with their
not
own
like,
petard.
Well, yeah, but this isn't ironic. It's the opposite. It's exactly what you would expect to happen. It's inevitable.
That's funny.
But it doesn't mean that it's going to go through a period of high drama. I think, again, it's hard to predict the future. I have seen a lot of the stuff that Elon's done. I think we all have. I have some sense of the complexity required to run systems that hundreds of millions of people use. I've never operated systems that more than hundreds of millions of people use, but I have operated systems that hundreds of millions of people use, which is not quite the scale of Twitter. But also that was for me many years ago. Things have gotten a little bit easier with infrastructure, so I have some appreciation of that. And I've seen other stuff that Elon's done, and they're like orders of magnitude harder than
SpaceX is harder. What he's done with Tesla is harder.
The boring company is harder.
The boring company. Yeah.
Look, I would have preferred that he buy Twitter and rename it the other boring company. And make it make it calm everything down. And he decided to go in a different direction. That's Elon. He's much more accomplished.
Phil, I want to make sure I didn't accidentally insult you earlier, because I realized what you're just saying. If you built a company and you laid off 80% of people that worked for you, if that inevitability had to happen for business reasons or whatever, I believe your company might actually still run. I also believe Tesla was built, Elon came in a little bit into it. He built the company it is today. He made he made nearly every decision, right? Same thing with SpaceX. This is not a company, he may not have invented the fundamental technology involved. He's not a space engineer. He made a lot of decisions, and he's responsible for good or bad or everything that's come out of that and their ability to perform today. Yeah. He did not build Twitter, and he went into Twitter as if he had built it and thus intuitively knew everything that went on. And I think I'd like to picture you going into Twitter, having spent $45 billion, I'm sure you've got the lying around, and have bought it and gone in there, and how you would have approached it, I cannot imagine would be like him at all, because you didn't build it. You didn't build that technology.
Yeah, look, obviously, so first of all, I don't think I would lay off 80% of my staff. And I don't know that Elon has either. We're not sure what the...
That's why we don't have any idea, right? We know it's 50 to 80%.
Yeah. But if you phrase it a different way, if I was running something like Twitter and 80% of my staff became, incapacitated due to COVID-23 or something, would I be able to keep it running? Yeah, I would be.
Yeah, I believe it. If you built it, I believe it.
And well,
but I mean, I don't think everything is reducibly incomplex enough that I think looking at Twitter from the outside, it feels very fragile, and looking at and watching Musk tear wires out, it makes it feel very fragile. So if it's more resilient than it appears, that's great. And I don't want to dance on Twitter's grave, because it's responsible for a lot of professional success and friendships and so forth. Yeah. But I also don't want it to, I think it's climbed out of a deep hole, and I don't want it to fall back into it, which is what it seems like he's leaping broadly into without a bungee cord.
Let's say two quick things kind of structurally about this. First of all, in some part thanks to Twitter, not entirely, but in some part thanks to Twitter, most things seem worse than they really are. Right? Like most things in life seem worse than they really are, because engagement-based business models, ad-based, micro-clicking business models incentivize everything to seem worse than it really is. And old Twitter bears some of the responsibility for that. I don't think not as much as Meta or Facebook, but some. And I think actually one of the things that Elon is doing, trying to reduce the reliance on advertising, is like a very good thing, because it really can dial the temperature down, because otherwise the incentive is to make everything seem worse than it really is. So that's kind of the first thing. And again, Twitter is now at the eye of the Twitter storm. It's like all of the inflated drama is now being focused on itself. So of course it seems terrible. That's exactly what you mean. It's not saying it's not bad, but it's probably not as bad as it seems. It probably looks worse than it really is. The second thing is I don't think that Elon, I don't know him very well personally. but I very much don't get the sense that he is a person that surrounds himself with yes men.
Really?
With people that
see, this is
very
news.
much
That's interesting.
Wow.
Okay, that's good news. That's a good thing. Is there somebody besides Jason Calacanis and David Sachs advising him?
His text messages would not support your statement.
Because he's in professional wrestling mode.
No, I mean his private text.
So he's doing a
messages are
Hulk
disclosed
Hogan at this point, yeah?
court. Privately and publicly, he makes the same kinds of statements.
I know. Several people that are relatively close to him in other companies. I know what he's built. You don't return rocket boosters synchronized.
It's pretty impressive.
Back to Earth.
I agree.
Being surrounded by yes men, you just don't.
But that's the
He's
conundrum.
that is not a
Phil.
thing that happens.
It's the conundrum about Elon is there is this amazing track record. And I really loved the manifesto he wrote for Tesla way back in the day. And it's very impressive. But then there's this other guy, the guy we see on Twitter, and it's like a different person. It's like a guy who's used too much acid and is confused and seems to believe his own story. And it is possible, isn't it, Phil, that he's changed a little bit since...
It's possible. I wouldn't know. It's possible.
I don't know either.
It's obviously possible. But it's also possible that it's going to be fine.
I want it to be fine because I'll tell you one thing, and I think everybody agrees: Twitter's important.
Yeah,
and it would be a horrific outcome if somebody buys it and drives it into the ground. There's been some speculation. Wesley Faulkner sent me a toot, saying he thinks that Elon was forced to buy it. He knew the court was going to go against him. He was going to buy it, and what he's trying to do is get out of his debt by forcing a bankruptcy and a reorganization so he doesn't have to pay back the debt. He's got a very large nut to cover, a $1.3 billion interest payment alone every year. So that's a completely out of nowhere theory. I don't know about finance in the way you do, obviously. But is it possible that that's what's going on, that Elon just wants to get out of this and this was the only way he thought he could do it?
What's the Occam's razor explanation?
God, I don't. That's this.
I wish there were one.
The simplest solution is always the right one, but I don't know what the simple solution is.
No,
here's the scenario that sounds like the Occam's razor to me. Elon, in a jest almost, and maybe in a fit of pique, said, "I want to buy it," and then for $54.20, the very fact that it was $54.20 is the price, to me implies jest. You know, the 420 in there is a marijuana reference. Sure. That. Then somehow, this is the question mark. How did he get in this? He made an agreement with Twitter that he would buy it without due diligence, which no intelligent business person would ever do. So I don't know what happened there. Remember, he bought 9% of it and then in January and then in April went public with that, wanted a board seat. Twitter did not want him on the board. He got thrown off within 24 hours. And I think that was what happened. I don't think he stepped down. I think he was thrown off. At that point, he got pissed off. Is that when he made this bad deal? In any event, ever since, within 24 hours, he was writing to his lawyers saying, hey, World War III is going to break out. Can we back down now? You know, he said, I want to hear what Putin has to say before we continue the purchase. Like Putin was going to create World War III and maybe we better not own Twitter. He was trying to squirm. He was squirming. He wanted to get out of it for a long time. At which point, Brett Taylor, chairman of the Twitter board, says, no, we're going to court. We're going to hold his feet to the fire. He has an agreement. We're going to make him agree. Elon said, no, there's bots. He came up with all sorts of things. I think we were getting very close the day before his deposition. We'd already seen this tranche of personal DMs that were not embarrassing to Elon, by the way, but embarrassing to every single other person who was DMing him, including Larry Ellison, who says, I'll give you $1 billion. And Elon says, can you give me 2? He says, yeah, 2, whatever. He raised the money. He went through all the steps. That takes some, clout. That takes some ability. He negotiated with a Saudi sovereign fund. He negotiated with Larry Ellison. He got Goldman Sachs and a bunch of banks to give him a $13 billion loan. Or is it 11 billion? Some huge amount. And then, but he wants to get out of it. I think on the day before he's supposed to give his deposition, somebody told him, maybe Spiro, his personal counsel, said, you're going to have to buy this. It's going to go against you. The court is pretty clear. The Delaware Court of Chancery is going to make you buy this for $44 billion. Because at that point, he says, all right, I don't want to go to court. I don't want this deposition. I don't want any more DMs revealed. I'll buy it. All of that, is that inaccurate, Phil? That timeline? That seems like that's pretty much what happened, yeah?
Well, first of all, I own courtofchancery.com, the URL. Anyone,
You do?
anyone wants it. I do, yeah. So
That's a good domain. When'd you buy that?
it's for sale. I think on the day, when Brett tweeted, "I'll see you at the Delaware Court of Chancery," I was like,
Smooth move.
So yeah, best offer accepted.
That's good. Like that's as good as three-peat.
Yeah,
But
look, sure. I mean, some version of that probably happened, but I think there's a different Occam's razor way to look at this, right? The simplest explanation.
Good. What's the
which
simplest
is,
explanation?
Like, Elon's kind of being obnoxious on Twitter because that's what one does on Twitter. And that's what people are rewarded for on Twitter. And that's like the point of Twitter. And he kind of has that, as part of his personality traits. I'm sure you guys are right. He probably underestimated some of the complexity. He probably came in there thinking like, I build rockets that can, land vertically back on Earth. Yeah. Like, how hard could it be? And I'm sure he underestimated it, and he pissed a bunch of people off, and a bunch of people quit, and a bunch more people quit. That all makes sense. But at the end of the day, he really did build these rockets that land back on Earth, and he really did build the car that I drive right now, which is the best car that I've ever owned. And Twitter, it's more complicated than he thought, but it's less complicated than the stuff that he's done before. And I think there's a very strong chance that, again, with way more drama than I would have wanted to see, it's going to turn out okay. And if he can actually do some of the things that he's talking about, and of course there's going to be outages. There'll be failures, there'll be outages, but we all remember the fail whale.
We've had the fail whale. We can live. We can survive.
So there'll be outages. And I think, again, I'm not guaranteeing this. I don't know. And, I don't predict the future. I think there's a very strong chance that within a few months, it's going to be better than it was a few months ago, and it'll be fine. And that's kind of what I'm counting for, because I would try Mastodon, but I can't deal with another elephant app right now. So I need Twitter. I need Twitter to make it.
I love that. By the way, I love this. You're talking about Mastodon. I love the fact that some people have left Twitter for the Fediverse. Mastodon's just one instance, but the Fediverse. And those people are a certain kind of geeky, tend to be liberals, tend to be left-wing, and they're finding a home, and that's fine. And I would love to see Twitter. I think you're right, Phil. I think he will find a way to make this work. He spent way too much money. And so he'll find a way to make this work. And there have to be good engineers out there he could bring in. There may be a learning curve for them as well as him. Twitter's so important. My problem is that the hardest thing about Twitter is something, by the way, that they never really solved. Forget monetization, because advertisers are already going, I don't want anything to do with this. CBS came back, though, which was weird. Not as an advertiser.
They said they were gone for much of the weekend.
Yeah,
which is
that's weird.
That's like much of the weekend.
That was a strange thing.
I took a nap for much of the weekend.
I know. That was really weird. Oh no, we're back. But advertisers, by the way, are not doing that. I have to say, advertisers are leaving the tech sector everywhere. Right. So we can't sell podcast advertising to save our life in 2023. So that's not just Twitter's problem. But that's also not my problem, because Elon will figure out how to monetize or not, but he'll figure that out. I worry more about the moderation problem. Mm-hmm. And what the problem, what is that old saw? You probably know this, Glenn, where you let one Nazi into your bar and then pretty soon you own a Nazi bar.
There's a bartender who told a good story about that on Twitter about, it was like the first one comes in and they seem they're there by themselves and they don't make much of a fuss. And if you don't throw that guy out, then pretty soon you're a Nazi bar. It's like an inevitable. I mean, this is all the tolerant being overwhelmed by the intolerant, right? There's a whole political philosophy about how we should not, or an argument. I don't want to say it hasn't been decided, right? This is a whole societal issue. Is it better to let people talk and let sunshine in, or to moderate, suppress, do other things outside of governmental approaches, not government censorship, to prevent points of view that crowd out other speech, right? This is always the battle we have is free speech. When people who are free speech, so-called maximalists, talk about it, they talk about everyone being able to speak freely, and yet some speech crowds out other speech, and there's no balance in that power. So I think that's the Nazi bar scenario, is like, if you let too many Nazis onto Twitter, and this is the thing, he's I think unsuspending Kathy Griffin and Donald Trump and Jordan Peterson and a few other people all at once is actually sort of a masterstroke. If he had just done people who are right-wing figures or people in a certain cultural matrix, but he let Kathy Griffin back on, and she's over at Mastodon saying, "No, thank you, I'm not even going to pay attention to that." That's a whole different argument about what he's trying to chart.
Yeah, I think Kathy Griffin was a throw-in because everybody else, Cat Turd and the Bumblebee, Cat Turd, Bumblebee, and Donald Trump, the big three, those are all on the right-hand side of the aisle. I think that is not Elon. Elon's, I'm sure, not a right-winger. He's probably a libertarian and probably wants the free speech thing. He likes that idea. But as he's quickly learning, free speech doesn't sell ads, and it's a Nazi bar problem because
it doesn't comply to national law. Like, they're going to have CSAM problems immediately. Like, this is unless they have the staff in place.
You can still watch the movie Speed, I'm told, on Twitter. Tweet by tweet. You only get a few minutes per tweet, but you could still do that, and they haven't taken that. So they're going to have a big moderation problem. Now, maybe he's going to bring in 1,000 new moderators, and it just takes a while.
Good AI.
It takes a while to do that, and at that point, let's say it takes him a year, which is a reasonable amount of time. Who's going to be left, and who's going to want to be part of it?
Look, I think how much of the problems, of the speech problems on Twitter right now would have existed, a few weeks ago, would have existed pre-Elon, if the people who are making the problems were all incented to right now go and do the stuff that they're doing. Mm-hmm. Right? You're kind of having two things happen, right? The first thing that happened is Elon took over, and now every Nazi or anything else, like, this is the time. This is like this is my moment. Now is when I'm going to do this. Whereas before, like, their activity was spread out over the course of many years. Now, like, everyone in the same week is going to be like, yeah, I'm going to make fake corporate accounts, and I'm going to upload the movie Speed, and I'm going to be a Nazi, because, like, that's where all the attention is. Because then CNN is breathlessly reporting about how, like, Twitter is falling apart. Like, if you were going to do on Twitter, you would want to do it last week, because, like,
now's the time,
eye of
baby.
Sauron is on you.
Yeah.
So even if Elon had changed nothing, and it was, like, literally the same exact code base, which I think mostly still is, there's obviously some changes, you still probably would have had the same problems. So your question really kind of decouples into two parts. You said, what if it takes him a year? It decouples into two parts. How long does it take for it to get incrementally better than it used to be? And I think, every couple of weeks it can get incrementally better. And at the same time, how long does the moment for the Nazis stick around? Because they're going to lose their interest. They're not going to, like, keep up this intensity of douchebaggery for the next year.
Well,
it's going to slow down.
I might argue with that, because we have fans who have never given up after 5 years of trolling us. The people who are into this are very persistent and do not give up, because they're nuts.
But the people like posting, movies and, like, doing that kind of stuff. There's a lot of
those people go away, of course.
But that's most of them.
That's trolls. I don't know if that's most of them. I mean, who's on Truth Social? I don't know if that's most of them. There is a large contingent of Americans, about half, who are filled with hate.
I don't know about that.
Phil,
you think half?
Yeah, I think half.
Hate?
Yeah, I think half.
Phil, you talk about, well, he has put rockets in space and revolutionized the electric car company, but rockets and cars are not media, and media is a lot harder than it looks, and Twitter is media. And Leo's right about the moderation problem. Yep. Those trolls do not go away.
Look at 4chan. Look at 8chan. Or 8 Moon,
right. And so, I think Elon has two personality failings that he's always had, and they come into this situation and kind of have bloomed. One of them is hubris, and the other is he really believes. He huffs his own smoke, and he really believes that he knows better than anybody around him. And so he tears it up, and then is kind of surprised at the mess he's made and calls them back. He essentially kind of doesn't know what he's doing, and is now winging it. And he may indeed be able to bring it back. Supposedly he's got this plan to create a kind of Uber app, X.com, so essentially you could, what he may be thinking is, well, before you can create something, you have to destroy it, and that's kind of what he's doing. But it didn't have to be that way, and he's ruined lives, and he has, crippled careers. A lot of these people are going out into a market where tech companies are laying off, not hiring. Yeah. And so it's it didn't have to be done this way. I saw a headline that referred to his brutal management style, and I think that's the problem. The question becomes, if you're a Twitter user, if you're a Twitter investor, if you're a regulator, does the end justify the means? And to me, it sure doesn't.
I agree that they didn't have to do it like this. I think he would probably agree with you at this point that he didn't have to do it like this. Much more drama than I would have wanted to see. But this is a separate question from is it really time to write the Twitter obituaries? I very much doubt that it's time to write the Twitter obituaries.
I think
it felt like the Titanic on Friday night. I got to say, everybody was saying goodbye.
Yes.
Irish,
and it was wildly entertaining and both bittersweet at the same time. I can't remember an evening on Twitter that I think was that affecting.
And you saw Ryan Broderick and Katie Nanopoulos from BuzzFeed. They started a Twitter, what is it called? Social Spaces? I forgot
that was
the name
a weird event.
With 20,000 people. So in the middle of it was fascinating to say Twitter's dying, but here's 20,000 people who want to join a Twitter thing, and it mostly ran okay. And I tuned in for, 20 or 30 minutes, and it was wild. It was actually an example of the best of what Twitter has to offer.
And Elon pointed out they had the biggest weekend of all time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Everybody goes to look at a car wreck.
That's right. That's rubbernecking. That's watching a car crash.
Yeah. Or people feeling like they're going to. It's like, why do you go to the Speedway? People often go to the Speedway to watch cars crash.
Yeah. I'm really glad we had you on, Phil, because I knew that you would be the voice of reason in all of this. And with your experience and expertise, I wanted to hear what you think. And you're not an Elon Musk stan, but I think you're quite reasonable in this. And I hope you're right, because I'd hate to see Twitter just turn into 4chan. I think that would be a very sad end to something that was so vital for so many people. One of the things you were seeing on Saturday and Friday was people saying, I met my spouse here. Some of the best interactions I ever had in my life on Twitter. And some of the most hateful interactions I've ever had in my life were on Twitter as well. But Twitter is important, and it'd be a shame to lose it. I feel more that way about Twitter than I do about Facebook, for instance, which I don't think will be a huge loss,
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to the three of you if it wasn't for Twitter.
Exactly.
I think that's how we got to know you.
Exactly. We're all parasocial friends. Yeah.
Most of the best things that have happened in my professional life and many in my personal life have happened in the last decade on Twitter. I've been able to change my career from being a technology journalist into a 19th century printing expert, in part because of Twitter. So thank you.
Yay,
I'm sure that's a career direction I would recommend for everyone.
No, let me tell you, there's lots of money in 19th century printing research.
But Phil, I think your points are really well taken, and you're the voice of reason. So thank you. It is true that it's no surprise that there's a lot of outrage and storm and drang associated with Twitter. That's what it was. Designed.
Phil, I want to hire you as my therapist because you're totally.
I feel much better.
So I'll say I've run businesses in which I've had at least one employee, so I feel very qualified to talk about an enterprise with 7,500. So I feel you're in a better position. But it's also, I think it's good. It's very easy. I think what we're talking about is an excellent example of that phenomenon you're describing, which is Twitter is about drama. It's optimized for drama because it's optimized for engagement, which improves advertising sell-through if it's not too horrible, right? Advertisers don't want to sell against horror, but they want to sell against a certain level of churn. And so I feel drawn into that because I'm watching every day this nonsense, people being late, the chaos, and I'm like, but I can listen to Phil, and I can step back and say, this is going to settle out or it's not, and I don't have to get all fussed about it. So actually, I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you.
We're going to take a little break and come talk about something of much more consequence: crypto. In just a bit. No, I'm just kidding. We'll find something. We'll cheer you up in just a bit. Great to have Phil Libin here. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about the history of Evernote, CEO and founder of allturtles.com, but his in his previous life, he was the guy who put Evernote on the map. And Evernote is in the news again this week. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Glenn Fleischman, he's in charge of fun at glenn.fun. And fun and flongs is his motto.
Fun and flongs. There we go.
Yep. And always a pleasure having you. And of course, my great friend, Dwight Silverman, Authory, AUTHORY.com/DSilverman. Both Glenn and Dwight use Authory to collate all of their many multifarious work, which is really cool. I didn't realize you also use it. And it actually solves a problem that people like you, modern journalists have, which is you're everywhere.
We're gadabouts. It's
gadabouts.
Can I tell you a piece of irony is that I wrote my first article about link rot in 1997, and of course it was dead by 1999. Could not get to the article. It was like, that's irony.
The solution to link rot, authory.com. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter. We have been so happy with ZipRecruiter. Some of our best staff hired on ZipRecruiter, because this is what happens. And Lisa's the one who ends up, suffering. Somebody says, I'm going to give you my 2 weeks. I got another job, or I'm moving, or whatever. And now we got to fill that position. And of course, the problem is the person who's filling the position, at least in a small company like ours, is also the one who's going to have to do the work of the person who's leaving while they're filling. And we all wear many hats in a business like ours. And it's hard to find people fast who are great. Well, it was until we found ZipRecruiter. Now, when we need somebody, we go to ZipRecruiter. It's been our experience within an hour or two, we'll get great candidates. And let me tell you why this works so well. It doesn't matter whether you're hiring a civil engineer in New York, a pediatric nurse in Nebraska, an attorney in Colorado, or even a mascot in Missouri, if you've seen the ads, or a continuity manager in Petaluma. ZipRecruiter helps you find quality candidates fast. And the way it works is so great. You post your opening on ZipRecruiter. Now, they're going to post it immediately to more than 100 other job sites and social networks. So you're immediately casting a wide net. But that's when ZipRecruiter's technology kicks in, because they will find people with the right experience and then tell you about them so you can invite them to apply. So this is really cool, because it turns out when you have a job opening and you're inviting somebody, you're saying, hey, I saw your resume and I think you'd be great for this job. Actually, ZipRecruiter did it, but we don't tell them that. And we think you'd be great for that job. That person is so excited to hear from you. They show up, they do the interview. I don't know if you had this experience, but ghosting interviews is a very common thing nowadays. You don't get that when you use ZipRecruiter. Plus, all of those people applying for your job, they don't come to your phone or your email. They go into the ZipRecruiter interface. You can screen them with yes/no questions, multiple choice, even essay questions. They reformat the resume so it's easy to read them. They do all this stuff to make it easy to hire fast. And fast is important when you're wearing many hats, right? 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. But I could tell you our experience has always been within a few hours, which is such a relief, because now we know we're going to find somebody. I love Lisa. She'll post at breakfast, and by lunchtime she's going, oh, this person's great. Oh, we got another one. It's such a relief. Try it free today. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. It is the smart way to hire. ZipRecruiter.com/TWIT. We thank ZipRecruiter for the job they do for us. We thank them for advertising on the show, and we thank you as listeners for using that address so they know you saw it here. That really helps us too. ZipRecruiter.com/twit, the smartest way to hire. Thank you, ZipRecruiter. A good conversation. The first kind of sensible conversation we've had about what's going on over at Twitter. So thank you, all 3 of you, for your analysis. Okay, we need a breather. let me find something not so depressing and serious.
I was going to say, what about Fred Brooks has died? No, that's not the right one.
Let's not do that. Greg Bear died. No. How about Elizabeth Holmes going to jail for 11 and a quarter years?
Yeah, I had funny feelings about it. It's
Me too.
Weird. I feel like I've had to look inside myself, because my reaction has been very schadenfreude-y about her, where I think that's unfortunate. Like, I think she did, listen, the court, jury decided she defrauded people. I think there's a lot of legal things you could say about what she did, but I found myself having a little glee about like, oh, good, they got her. And then I'm thinking, this poor woman at some level, she did cause actual or seemingly cause actual harm to people who got misleading blood results. Like she could have put people in danger, and there are issues there. But I also think she got disproportionate attention because of her gender, and I think there was a sort of gendered response to it. She did lead a giant fraud, and she should take responsibility for what she did and doesn't seem to be able to. But I don't feel like I should feel great about anybody going to jail, especially when it's clear she has lots of it. The fact that she can't really see that she did anything wrong, that these things she is a futurist who was too optimistic. I think that is a sad thing, not necessarily to be celebrated.
Dwight, what do you think?
Well, I agree with half of what Glenn said. She committed fraud. She defrauded investors. She misled people. She, to a certain extent, she provided hope when there was no hope, really. And, the sentencing guidelines were, 11 years to 20 years? Mm-hmm. And I was looking at that, and I was thinking, her conduct was so egregious that I was thinking the judge could go 15 to 20. And so I was a little surprised that she only, and I say only,
she got the minimum, I think.
She got the minimum. Yeah. And,
although we should say the judge has discretion and can go lower than the guidelines, right? Right. She's not required to go to the guidelines, but she did in this case. Yeah. I look at somebody like Alan Weisselberg, who was the CFO of the Trump organization, who got 6 months?
Well, he might get 100 days, I think, if he fully cooperates.
So I just feel like
for stealing.
Here's to me the rule is don't defraud George Shultz, because if you defraud the biggest, most important, most powerful people in the country, we're going to get you.
Okay, wait. You want something fun to talk about? Is George Shultz has a tiger tattoo on part of his body?
Because he's a Princeton man, as all good Princeton men.
Wait a minute.
Tell me you don't have a bulldog on your butt.
I have no bulldogs on my behind.
Wow, what kind of Yale man are you? Phil, what do you think? 11 years, outrageous or appropriate?
I have really complicated feelings about it. I think it feels unfair to me. It feels unfair, not compared to other people that have been sentenced for fraud. Madoff got 150 years, and Jeffrey Skilling got 14 years or whatever. So that seems in line. But it feels unfair when you compare to all the people that we know have done far worse that never get prosecuted. So I think it depends on the frame of reference. If you're comparing her to other people that have been sentenced for this kind of stuff, then yeah, it's about right. But it's hard for me not to compare it to all the people that I know do far worse every day and that don't get prosecuted and don't get anything. And I think in general, I don't like these, send a message sentences. I think they're unfair. I think what we should do is we should prosecute many more people. We should be much more consistent with prosecuting fraud. We should have much more prosecution on, white collar crime, so that it should be a predictable outcome of defrauding people. As it is right now, we prosecute very few people, and then the ones that we convict, sometimes they get massive sentences. But I don't. A, that doesn't seem fair to the person getting the sentence, and B, that doesn't seem like the right kind of deterrent effect, because I don't think most would-be fraudsters are deterred by, oh yeah, this is the 1 in a million shot that maybe I'll get caught and go to jail.
The next Elizabeth Holmes isn't looking at this going, oh well, I better not defraud anybody.
Right. No, but if you were going to do this and you were like, well, there's a 25% chance that I'm going to wind up being convicted and going to jail for a year, I think that would be a much less of a deterrent. So it feels wrong to me, and it feels wrong because I know lots of people who do far worse and they don't get prosecuted at all.
I hope you turn them in, Phil.
By the way, Phil's plane has landed, and now apparently he's in Tokyo for the Cherry Blossom Festival.
In the spring,
that's great. Tokyo last year in February. So, and we all have mixed feelings. Part of my mixed feelings are inappropriate, which is that she has a 1-year-old and she's pregnant with another child. That's two children who will not have their mom. Now, will she do 11 years, or is there good time off for good behavior?
It's a federal sentence. Unless her appeal comes in, she's in. There's no parole in the federal.
Even if she goes to the country club jail, that's hard time.
Because this is federal prison.
of
Yeah,
your
so federal-
life.
There's
Like,
a
yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's a
No,
great
please.
Law and Order episode that a number of years ago that I always think about in terms of this when I try to calibrate my feelings. It's an episode that it plays on that someone's kidneys are stolen and they wake up in a tub of ice, urban myth which circulates. This literally happens in the episode. As somebody wakes up, his kidney's been stolen and there's a bag of ice. And they eventually figure out that it's a guy, it's a very rich man whose daughter needed a kidney and he couldn't get one through a reasonable way. So he essentially hired someone to, hired goons to find somebody with a good kidney that was a match, and then paid doctors huge amounts of money to perform the surgery. And the great line at the end on the stand was, Mr. So-and-so, this time was a kidney, he survived. He's actually going to be fine, the person whose organ you ripped from his body. But if it had been a heart, would you have done anything differently? And I sometimes think that's the calibration factor is I think about Holmes and I'm thinking it does seem like too much. It doesn't seem like it has a deterrent effect. I feel bad for her children, her family, and the harm she committed. Did she, was she out there actively killing people? Well, there's some arguments that there were adverse health effects that resulted from some people getting bad test information. And the thing is, I think if 100 people had died from this, as opposed to
That would be different. That would be different.
But I think also I don't think her behavior would have necessarily been any different is the problem.
Well, and if I'm Sunny
She has no
Balwani,
remorse. She is remorseless.
she was because she didn't think
it feels like she doesn't think
this is what you do in tech. Somewhat, I have to say, somewhat our own culture is to blame because we lionized her, and she was taught to some degree that you fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how Steve Jobs made it. That's how Elon Musk made it. You go and you go and you go till you make it, and sometimes you don't.
I think there's two issues here that are separate. And so whenever I find myself having these like conflicted feelings, I try to figure out is there more than one thing that I'm having feelings about? And I think in this case there are. I think the real issue here is that this verdict highlights how few people get prosecuted for fraud. That's the real, that is more important to me than how much Elizabeth Holmes should serve.
Because it's hard to prove.
It is hard to prove.
a lot of money went into this trial, that's for sure. Too.
Yeah, for all sorts of reasons. But relatively few people get prosecuted for it, and this points that out, and that's a big problem. That's separate from, does she deserve 11 years or 5 years or whatever? And I'm less attached to that position. I think personally, it doesn't really do anyone any good to lock her away for 11 years. So I would have done something a lot more lenient, but I'm also totally happy to be hey, I'm not the judge. This is the way the system works, whatever.
Let me
the
compare
reason
it.
that I feel it's...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your sentence.
I said no. The reason that it feels unfair to me is because it points out how look at all these other people who aren't getting prosecuted at all.
Justice has always been uneven, right? It's impossible. It's the nature of justice. You do the best you can. You can't fault a sentence because not everybody gets the same sentence. It's unfair. Some people get 6 months. Some people get 11 years. Some people don't even get caught. We do the best we can. It's a very imperfect system.
Yeah, you can say that there should be, more prosecutions for things that are likely fraud.
Yeah. I think we could pull up Trevor Milton from last month or 6 weeks ago, the founder of Nikola, who was convicted of. I just want to make this clear. He's convicted of 1 count of securities fraud and 2 counts of wire fraud. But that is an amazing case, and in that I have no concerns about what time he gets put away for because the man is clearly completely pathological.
He's facing up to 25 years with sentencing.
Yeah,
in January.
He's got a multi-decade career of telling people all kinds of things, and it's
similar fraud, except it wasn't health fraud. It wasn't. Nobody's life was endangered by Nikola.
Yeah, I mean, right. If some of the cars could have been dangerous if they'd actually worked, but I feel like it was a more straightforward thing where it was clear. I'm not always clear whether Elizabeth Holmes truly knew whether her stuff worked or not, or she was being, pushing the window. Sometimes clearly not, and the courts found, or the jury found, that she clearly went too far. But it's very clear that Milton knew he was pushing, or should have known, morally, ethically, intellectually, that what he was saying was absolutely false, and it was intentional. It was just it was a scam as opposed to what I'm sure. I mean, I know that Elizabeth Holmes absolutely wanted to make that business a real thing.
Meanwhile, Billy McFarland, who did the Fire Festival, got 6 years and is in a halfway house now after 4. Although Ray Hushpuppi got 11 years, so there you go.
Ray Hushpuppi. What?
The same week, Nigerian man named Raymond Olurunwa Abbas, a.k.a. Ray Hushpuppi, 11 years in federal prison. He was a kind of
that guy.
That guy. They got him in Dubai and extradited him. He'd been involved in vast money laundering, email compromise, bank heists, all sorts of stuff. And he got 11 years. I don't know. I think Ray Hushpuppi, probably a worse guy than Elizabeth Holmes. What is the point of prison? Is prison to deter? Is prison to rehabilitate? Do you think Elizabeth Holmes will be a better person 11 years from now?
This gets into that whole. I mean, I feel like the carceral state is a huge problem, and it feeds on itself. And we put people in jail to put people in jail, and it feeds the industrial prison complex. I think there's a whole bunch. But then there's people we need to be protected against as a society, and there's people who need to be protected from themselves. And I think the overlap of that is we throw many more people into jail for reasons that don't make any sense and are non-productive for them and for society. Yeah. So, I'm not worried that Holmes is going to come to my house and steal my blood, So does she actually have to be in jail, or are there other punishments that would serve a deterrent effect for her? But there are people who I am worried would break into my house and steal my blood, and I think there's
some crooks. I don't think Elizabeth Holmes is an ongoing danger to anybody.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Although, then you have, I think, Phil, I wouldn't want to put this word into your mouth, but it's like Adam Newman is an example of somebody who raised billions of dollars. Upward. Right, and then he's completely successful but I mean, I think he's a true believer in what he does, absolutely, religiously so. But how was he never, I mean, I don't want to make accusations against him. I've read books, I've seen things, it's like, I don't know that he ever did anything that is even technically illegal. I don't know. I mean, he hasn't been charged with anything, right?
The founder of WeWork, who cost Matsuyoshi's son, billions of dollars.
A victimless crime.
and really put the SoftBank fund in kind of jeopardy after Sun kind of said, I believe in you. Whatever it is you're selling, I want more of that.
But that's the difference. What's the difference between Adam Newman and
he's worth
$1.2
billion and just got a huge gift from Andreessen Horowitz to do his next big thing.
And again, I don't want to accuse him of anything. I think the fascinating part about him is I think he sold long and sold, or he talked long and sold short, so he couldn't fulfill exactly what he was promising. But I think he did it in a very carefully done way that had a potential. I mean, after I read one of the really well-researched books about WeWork, I came out of it thinking this guy wasn't a scammer. What he was he had an arc where as long as this is shades of FTX and Sam, what's his name, Bankman-Fried, I think Newman actually had an arc where if you keep people believing long enough, there was the potential for profit to come at the other end of the pipe. Maybe not the way you
I don't think so, actually. I think...
I guess you're right.
What about Travis Kalanick? So you've raised money, Phil, right? You've gone to VCs.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You're putting me in a tough spot because I know all these people.
I know you do. So you can, at any point, recuse yourself. But I'm just curious.
Full disclosure, Sun is currently a major investor in my company.
I worked for Sun when he bought Ziff Davis. And I have great respect for the man. I think he was the victim, frankly, of Adam Newman. But that aside, is there something broken in the way we do VC that it rewards people like Elizabeth Holmes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's all sorts of interesting questions here. One, I think just very basic question is, where'd the money go? Where did the money go with Elizabeth Holmes? Where did the money go with Adam Newman? Mm-hmm. Where did the money go with SBF? And I think those are very different answers.
Yeah.
And I think that answer is kind of important to determining the level of at least moral culpability of people. Right, as far as we know, and I think we know pretty well, Elizabeth Holmes didn't wind up with a big chunk of that money.
Right.
Adam Newman wound up with some of it. Significant amount, $1 billion or so.
It's interesting that Mark Andreessen would give him another $350 million.
Well, but seriously, if you're evaluating, fraud, potential fraud, or actual fraud, where did the money go?
Right.
I think
landlords. I think mostly, right? I mean, we were
salaries.
basically paid a lot of leases, and that was.
He had a high burn rate.
WeWork was a real estate business.
Yeah.
Well, and the story,
that's where it went.
I understand it, was the real problem was always going to be that he was making long-term deals for leases and short-term deals with his customers.
But where did it go with Theranos?
Yeah, I always curious. Well,
That's
I don't
a
think
really
they
good
raised,
question.
This is the judge in the case. Remember, they were trying to get $800-something million in damages, the prosecutors, and the judge decided, what was the number? It was $180 million. It was something substantially lower.
Yeah.
Like 22 investors said they lost whatever. And I think it was because the actual scope of they didn't spend as much money as it sounds because they had such a super high valuation that
It's
I
the
think
markup.
it was. Yeah, it was right. So his employee. So Holmes the loss there was right. Was or the money was spent for employees and equipment and real estate. But I don't feel like I'm sure she had some nice houses, but her family was very wealthy or somewhat wealthy to begin with. So.
Yeah, as far as we know, like that money went to paying a lot of salaries for a lot of people and a lot of equipment. And like it wasn't, if there was fraud, and to some extent the court determined there was fraud, so that it's fine, there's fraud. But I think it's a very different type than what probably happened with FTX, for example. Where money was just outright stolen.
Where is that money? The FTX money is like where is it all? It's billions is gone.
Yeah, so as far as fraud goes,
SBF. It looks like now the latest is took $300 million off the table in their last round.
Yeah.
So that's somewhere, right? Unless I don't know. That's a lot of beanbags. I don't know what. That's somewhere. The
incentives, though, you asked a really good question about like what's broken about VC, and I think like, look, I know obviously a lot of VCs. I was a VC myself for 2 years at General Catalyst. A bunch of people are friends of mine, and I think for the most part, a lot of these people are generally good people. They're genuinely smart. They're genuinely good. They genuinely want to do the right thing. Not everyone. You know who you are. But for the most part,
they're not though. Even thinking about, or are they? You tell me. Do they think they're not trying to use their money to do good? They're trying to make an investment that will pay off.
A lot of them are trying to use their money to do good.
Really,
interesting. A lot, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But look, here's the thing. Here's like the main thing that I figured out. The vast majority of people, myself included, will act according to our incentives. So first, we act according to our incentives. If you look at how the incentives are set up, that will predict how we act. And then most of us, myself included, will act according to our incentives and then make up a narrative about why that action is morally sound.
Yeah, that's how all decisions are made, by the way. Yeah, that's how the mind works.
Oh my God!
And that narrative is true. We believe it. We really do.
Yeah.
But it's not surprising that it just so happens that the morally correct thing that we tell ourselves happens to always line up with our financial incentives the vast majority of the time. So if I want to lead a moral life, which I do, the best way to do it, since I can't trust myself to not follow my incentives, is to make sure that I set up my incentives first to go in the direction that I want to go. And not everyone does that. So when you look at how VCs operate, how do they make money? What's the incentives? Well, they make money by investing. They don't make money by not investing. They make money by investing. They make money by investing a lot. They make more money by investing a lot.
Yeah.
They make more money by investing a lot quickly, so they can raise the next round. So they can raise the next fund. So they could stack management fees and carry and all that stuff.
It's
and by
a
the way,
business.
the LPs,
It's a business fundamentally, right?
100%. Almost all of the incentives are set up for invest as much as you can. Now, the vast majority of these people will do it with due diligence, or what they think is the right amount of due diligence, and they'll do it because they genuinely think that it's money making.
But the due
diligence
isn't
more.
The question they're asking is this going to make the world a better place? Maybe that's a secondary question. The question is this going to make money?
Is it real? Is it going to make money?
Yeah.
And you can say, well, but they should do a lot more due diligence. Okay, but most of the funds, even that invested in like FTX and stuff, like those funds are actually doing great, right? Because like the VC model is predicated upon, for the most part, believe founders. And yeah, once in a while that's going to screw you. But the belief founders tends to, in the past, have historically generated very good returns, because you do get the Steve Jobs and the everyone else's who to some extent there's a fake it until you make it, but enough of them make it and make it big that it's worthwhile. So this is the model, the way that it's been set up, and that's why when crypto comes along, it's like the greatest thing that a lot of these investors have ever seen, because the crypto comes along and they're like, we need $420 million. And you're like, for what? Well, I don't know, because no one knows what crypto is going to cost. Like, there's no, like, it's not like a SaaS company where you can kind of say, oh, you need this many engineers. You're like, I don't know. And so the investors are sitting there looking at like, wow, I can write a giant check into this company, which means I can get my next, fund, like all of that. Like, again, all the incentives take over. So it's like, it is an incentive system sort of scamming itself, except actually over time, for the most part, it works pretty well. But then we pick bits and pieces to be like outraged over.
This is really interesting. I feel like most of the time on this show, Glenn and Dwight and I, we're like playing pool, and all of a sudden Phil comes in and he's got his cue in a case, and he's opening it up, and he's saying, "Let me show you how the game is played." I mean, seriously, you're the pro. You're the pro from Dover. You understand how this stuff works, and you've been in there. You've got that mindset. So it's really great. It's really great to hear. And the other thing I like about you, Phil, is you're thoughtful. And so you even as you're going through this process, you're kind of self-aware about what's going on. The problem with crypto, if you're investing in it, is it's as purely a speculative investment as it can be, right?
It's all a scam, yeah, by definitionally.
Yes, its true value is zero.
There is no value.
Its true value is zero.
But can I tell you this? Gold is the same, because gold has a small industrial value. When you buy gold, you're not buying it for its industrial value. You're buying it because, as a speculative investment, you think it's going to be worth more tomorrow because somebody's going to pay more, right?
It's not the same as gold. And zero connection, like no connection to objective reality, is very different from a small connection to objective reality.
Yeah, because honestly, if a stock doesn't pay a dividend, you're buying a stock in a company doesn't really give you ownership of anything tangible, because without the dividend there's no payback if the company does well. Even when you're buying stock, you're buying something that you're presuming is going to go up in value based on some the news or whatever. So there's all investments are somewhat speculative. But you're saying
stock, in stock, you're in theory, your value goes up if the quality of the company's product is good enough to warrant it to go up. There are other factors like the news, and there is speculation. But look at Apple. Apple's products were lackluster and dying on the vine.
Yeah.
And Steve Jobs came in and made good products.
To some degree an illusion? Unless a company buys back its stock, takes its profits and buys back its stock, increasing your value, or gives you a dividend, the actual stock value is what investors make up.
Yes, but
look at GameStop. It wasn't because their business suddenly was great.
No, that was a joke.
But that's what I'm saying, is that kind of even stock investments are somewhat in that realm of speculative. But you made an excellent point, Phil. Even the smallest attachment to reality is better than zero.
It's like a seed. It's a seed, and everything else builds upon it. There are no seeds in crypto.
Yeah, if you buy pork belly futures, you could wind up with a bunch of them on your front lawn if you're not careful. If you let the contract expire.
Gold, gold you're not buying for its industrial value, but there's only gold. There's not like a gold 2, gold 3, infinite number of other things that people can invent to be gold. It's like it's a thing that there's one of.
Yeah.
A stock is the value of a company is the current value given net present discounts of all future profits. That's the floor of it. So most companies are worth something, and so there's a floor because it is like the present value of future profits. So there's like a floor below which I would buy it.
Right.
But because there's some connection to reality.
But the price of a stock often isn't related to that, right?
No. But because there's a floor, you can do all sorts of financialization on top of it.
Right.
Because the floor is a real thing.
Right.
So you look at GameStop, which was absolutely a meme stunk. But what probably happened, right, is it was before this, it was actually undervalued because people were like, oh, it's physical stores and they're never going to do anything, and then it became a meme stock, and there was a lot of activities, and it settled into a range that's way off what its highs were, but also significantly higher than it's been trading in for the past 5 years before. So like there is I think there's a big difference between like a tenuous connection and absolutely none.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of underappreciate the difference between those.
There's
two
no
things.
floor in Bitcoin.
Well, what is it? SBF had that great thing. Matt Levine cites it all the time. Matt Levine interviewed SBF on stage, what was it, a year ago or last summer, I think. And Sam was talking about, well, if you have a box and you have a black box and you put stuff in it and you never take the cash out, no one knows the box is, and you speculate on the box. And I was kind of like, what the hell? And Matt Levine's response was, you just described a Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
Like, well, it's not exactly a Ponzi scheme. It was like, I mean, that was the classic moment when somebody, the magician described how the trick was done, probably not for his own good.
We're talking all around SBF. Let's talk about FTX and SBF in just a little bit. Got to take a break. Plus, I think Phil needs to find a new destination. What are you using to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about
Well,
are you still happy with the name?
I like the watermark
such a hard
on
time
his
in this
screen.
episode. Phil is a good
Watermark
sport.
is great on his screen.
I love the name.
You love the name. Good. All right.
I love the name. It's people keep talking about it.
It's true.
It's pretty fantastic. It's easy to remember. It's easy to pronounce.
Oh, look. He's suddenly in his office.
Yeah. We're calling people back to the office. It's all about butts and seats, people.
It's really your timing was very good, of course, because of COVID. Everybody started to use Zoom and other apps. Is for Mac and Windows, and it lets you, as you can see, put yourself anywhere. But also, more importantly, maybe it allows you to do presentations, which is great. I mean, that's very cool, and have over-the-shoulder shots like they do in real TV and all of that.
I have a good description of as an outsider, which is is OBS if OBS made sense to human beings. So for those of you who open broadcast system, is that what it's called? OBS? Yeah. Which I've used, and it's manageable and it does really unique things, but I feel when I'm done with it like I've been illegally engaging in surgical practice.
You think you've been generating Bitcoin behind the scenes.
It's really.
It's like, hey, could I use So I use OBS when I want to do a Let's Play stream, which I do sometimes for the club and stuff. We play games. Could I use to do that? To do that?
Yeah.
So I could put a picture of the game, and it'd probably do a better job. Come to think of it.
There's a lot of stuff you can do. The main idea is, it's about communication superpowers. I think is like, it's like a warm-up to the rest of your life of not hating being on video.
The name reminds me of that fictional search engine in The Good Wife and The Good Fight, Chum Hum. The Good Fight. May it rest in peace.
Oh, what a great show, huh?
It was a great show.
And a great show for technologists, because they always covered like real deal stuff, including probably kidneys in ice-filled bathtubs. Is mmhmm.app. Definitely worth taking a look at, and we're so glad to have its founder, Phil Libin. I do also want to talk about Evernote in just a little bit, but first a word from our sponsor, Nareva. Now, we just talked about the video in your next conference call. What about the audio? And I think everybody knows, and if they don't, you should know, you can have great video. If the audio's bad, it's over. Game over, man. Game over. You got to have good audio. And nowadays, this is problematic because you're hybrid work, right? So there's people in the office, there's people at home. In order to have a meeting, you're going to have, a conference call. And that puts your IT professional in a tough spot. It means, now you have to equip and support more spaces with audio and video conferencing systems. But, you're also worried about the next, email exploit, next spear phishing attack. You got a lot of issues with network security. Maybe you're doing your cloud shift, your infrastructure issues, and maybe you got, problems with the card key system. So who has time to work on the audio in your meeting rooms? Now you can do it, and you don't have to think about it. An intelligent product that requires minimal effort from IT to deploy and manage at scale, with the bonus of requiring zero end-user training. And when it comes to conferencing in larger spaces, This is a great solution. You don't have to bring in some AV company to wire everything up and install it and maintain it and tweak it every single time. No, all you need is Nareva. With Nareva, you get true full room mic pickup from just one or two microphone and speaker bars. Two only if you've got a giant room. Compare that to all the microphones and the wiping down and the putting of the muffs on and the speakers and the amps and the DSPs and the switchers, and you got to tune it, and that's crazy. And the cost. Nareva, you can install in most spaces in less than 30 minutes. Ever put up a sound bar? That's what it's like. For larger spaces, okay, you're going to put up two, it's going to take you an hour. Amazingly simple. No special expertise is required. You can manage and deploy it from your seat. Adjust all your Nareva systems from their cloud-based platform. It's called Nareva Console. Completely scalable for large organizations, and the sound is great. Their patented microphone mist technology puts thousands of microphones in your space. People can walk around, they can move around, they can face any way they want. They can socially distance like they want. It's flexible, it's easy. Users don't even have to think about it. It just works. Now compare that with installations for traditional systems that could take your room down for days, cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and require the IT guy to come down. You need an AV squad, right? They're going to come down the hall. And now you can get 50% off on a Nareva HTL 300 system. That's perfect for a mid-sized room. Just get an online demo and buy before December 16th, 2022. NUREVA.com/twit. This is a solution as time has come. The right way to do audio for your next huddle, your next meeting, your next conference, your next all hands. NUREVA, Nareva.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support for the show and the network. They've been with us for a long time. We really like the product, and we're really glad to share it with you. You do us a favor, though, and use Nareva.com/twit so they know you saw it here. Thank you, Nareva. I do want to talk. So, tell me about Bending Spoons, Phil. Who are these people? They just bought Evernote. Is it kind of the end of Evernote?
I don't think so. I don't actually know that much about it. It's been 8 years since I've been with the company.
I know, but you must still. Your heart is still, right? A little bit.
I left my heart in San Francisco, but I'm living in Arkansas now. Reward if found. Yeah, look, I still use Evernote every day. I have a lot of friends there. It seems like a good outcome.
Good. They bought Filmic, and they've done but mostly what they do video stuff. So it seemed like a little weird. Was it that the owners just wanted to get out from under it? Was it struggling? Do you know?
I don't think it was struggling, so I continue to be a shareholder of it. But again, I made the decision when I left about 8 years ago. So this was like 2015, I think, 2014, 2015. I decided to replace myself as the CEO. And my original plan was we'll get a CEO, and then I'll stay on as like executive chairman. I'll do product stuff. I'll do like strategery. I kind of wanted to do what like Reid Hoffman did at LinkedIn,
right?
When he brought Jeff on. That was kind of my model, and I knew there was like a 50% chance that it would work and a 50% chance that it wouldn't, because like you bring in a CEO, like what's actually going to happen is going to depend very much on the new CEO. And so we did a search, and it turned out within a few months of Chris O'Neill, who was the CEO who replaced me, and then Ian Small took over from that. It turns out within a few months that me hovering around was just like way too difficult. It was way too difficult for me, for the new guy, for the company. It's just like, it just made no sense. And so I made a decision about 8 years ago that like, look, I'm, okay, I got to be out. And I got to be out like completely, not like hovering around, being like, I would have done this.
Right.
Oh, you shouldn't really? Are you sure about that? Like, because the whole point is like, of course he would do things differently than I would have done them. That's why we decided to have him and not me. So I thought the best thing I could do was like, hey, I'm around for any kind of help if you ever need it, and I'm a supporter of the company and I'm a friend, but I'm not gonna hang around.
What year was that you kind of said, okay?
I think it was 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
So it's like it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And
Chris O'Neill took over
Chris O'Neill took over, and then he was there for a few years, and then Ian Small took over, and he's there now. Raul Lavata, who was at Sequoia, who was currently the senior steward of Sequoia, was kind of the main investor in Evernote when I was there, and he's still on my board at So I've kept close to a bunch of the people. Obviously, still have a ton of friends there, and I think Bending Spoons bought it. Like, why would they buy it? Well, they bought it because they love it, because they think it's a great app, and because they think they can make it even more successful. Like, this is not there's no like magical nefarious reasons why an app company would buy something if they just intended to not do anything with it. So I feel pretty good about it. But again, I don't want to overstate my level of knowledge or involvement.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, I think I was such a huge fan of Evernote. Did you read the blog post from Hitan Shah, the history of Evernote, or maybe you haven't seen it? Yeah. This was I recommend it. I don't know about its conclusions, and without your input, I don't know if he says ahead of its time, behind the curve, why Evernote failed to realize its potential. He starts with Stepan Pachikov and you getting together, creating Evernote. That's about when I found it. I had been using OneNote, and the thing I loved about Evernote was the ribbon thing that I think you brought to the table, this idea of this continuous note. I just loved it, and put everything in Evernote for a long time. It was long after you left. It was, I think, when they went to the subscription model that I finally said, I'm going to find another solution. And nowadays there are a lot of open source free solutions. This has become a very crowded market with a lot of different segments of the market. Note-taking by itself is, become, Zettelkasten and all this stuff. But Evernote for years was great. Were you there when they did the separate apps, like the Hello app and the Food app and all of that?
Yeah, so Evernote,
I loved that. But then they
basically
killed it.
So it started. There was a company called Evernote. It was a different company. It had a capital N, and its logo was like this, flying toilet paper. and
not a great logo. Okay, good. All right.
It's not the world's best logo, but. And that was started by Stepan Pachikov, who was a brilliant entrepreneur, inventor. And then I had just sold with my team, and they were in Silicon Valley. I had just sold my second company in Boston and started working on what I was calling Ribbon, as a way of like a tie ribbon around your finger to help you remember stuff. I also wanted to build like an infinite memory. Met Stepan, and we just sort of really hit it off. And decided to kind of merge the two companies, and so we recreated Evernote. We kind of made a new corporate entity that was called Evernote in 2007.
No uppercase N, one word.
And so the thing that most people know with the elephant and all that stuff, that was that's what we started.
Elephant never forgets. Yeah.
And remember everything was the slogan. It's still the best thing I've ever written. It's kind of sad for me. It's like the best thing I'll probably ever write in my life is those two words. It's just remember everything. I was there for the first 9 years, and then I stayed on as, I think, chairman for another year after that. But we did a bunch of different apps. We did a lot of stuff. I think we kind of made productivity something that was cool again. I think
you were the first. Yeah, I mean, OneNote was there, but OneNote was way too complicated.
Yeah, and a bunch of people came after us. Afterwards, I'm happy to say it. I think the productivity industry right now is
huge,
better than it's ever been.
Yeah,
and that's cool. I feel a sense of pride to having contributed to that. And
this is a
great team.
This is the page in 2008. I got it on the Wayback Machine.
Yeah,
this is the remember see the cocktail napkin, remember everything. God, those were the days,
They've got about 20 people.
Smartphone in that image.
Yeah. This is when Twitter was young and the iPhone just barely had 3G. Those were the days, my friend.
There was no iPhone. This was the first iPhone, and that shot was probably our web app because it was right before apps.
Yeah.
So I think we were on the App Store on the first day. We had a bunch of different apps. A few 100 million users, I think, total. And then, like I said, my plan was to. I basically decided once we got to 400 people, 450 people, I was like, I'm just not having that much fun.
That's a big company. Yeah.
It's a big company. And I thought I'm just not, I thought we could get a better CEO. because company was successful.
I'm not sure that's true, Phil.
And and when you we talked a lot about being a 100-year startup. You remember that? I think it was on your show.
I remember.
And the 100-year startup meant like that we want to be around in 100 years, but we still want to be a startup. We still want to be like innovating. And a big part of the 100-year startup idea was like me getting comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to be the CEO for 100 years.
Right. Obviously.
So like it has to be my job to get the next person who's better, or else we failed. So once that happened, it was time to step away when it became obvious to me that having two people hanging around and like making top decisions just wasn't going to be good for anyone. So
Evernote is one of those rare apps that it doesn't have users, it has fans. And people will evangelize.
I was one of them. I was absolutely a fan.
In a newsroom, Evernote, in the Houston Chronicle, reporters who got into Evernote would like become pests. They would come up to you and go, "Are you not using Evernote? Why aren't you using?" It's like it became something that was evangelical, and there aren't a lot of apps that are like that, and Evernote certainly is one of them.
Yeah.
The thing that was so great about it, I don't know when this feature was added, but I feel like it took it to the next level for me because I've been using it for, 8 or 10 years. I was using Yojimbo, a bare bones.
I used Yojimbo from Rich Siegel. Loved Yojimbo.
It just didn't. I think it just didn't fit into their evolution. Yeah. So I was like, it's like Yojimbo is the thing that fit my brain best. Mm-hmm. And so when I encountered Evernote, I'm like, and I actually figured out how to export Yojimbo to Evernote. It was great. And I was like, I need a junk drawer for my brain that matches my brain's internal organization scheme. But the thing that took me over and why I paid the subscription fee and still do is the built-in OCR, where that was not unheard of at the time, but it was pretty weak in a lot of apps. You had to use, Acrobat, have a paid subscription to Creative Cloud. And now I feel like the pervasiveness of OCR is, especially Apple, the last couple releases. I mean, they added this thing quietly where you could search in iOS 15 before the release of iOS 16, where only on the search screen you could search for text in your photo library, but you couldn't do it in Photos. Then they rolled it all out. And this notion that all text everywhere, so in Evernote now, in my Notes app, and Photos, and almost everything I do everywhere, all graphical text is now fairly effectively searchable. Say that 5 times fast. That is a massive difference in like the history of humanity. Not just like, data is great to store, but we have so much data that's not in text entered Unicode, whatever format. It's so anyway, Evernote, I felt like that was this big eye-opening thing where like I throw a thing in there, and at that time it took, I think, a few minutes sometimes to do the OCR, and now it's essentially instantaneous, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's just a seamless process across all these apps.
Yeah, we did. I think we had a couple of innovations that are very much table stakes now. That we were mainstream with it first. One was OCR, one was just synchronizing automatically. Mm-hmm. Like it was the first time that I could like put something on my Mac and then pull it up on my iPhone.
Huge.
And, like I don't have to set up an FTP server, Mastodon instance, whatever they're called now. Like it just worked. There was no we were one of the first things that didn't have like the concept of a server. It wasn't users didn't really have any like options like did you want to use USB to move things over or FTP. It just worked. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Remember, we were pre-cloud. The ubiquity of the cloud kind of came around after we were a couple of years old already. We had our own data centers, just like Twitter apparently does. Like we had to build our own data centers out. We were on the App Store from day one. We were kind of, as every company launched a mobile phone and an app, we had Apple did it, and then Google, and then BlackBerry, and Palm, and like all of these, app stores. Like there was 5 apps that every device had to have like on it, pre-installed, and it was always like Facebook, Twitter, a game, a web browser, and Evernote. We were the default thing, and those are all thing accomplishments that I feel great about. I feel great about being part of that team.
You should.
And I think, but like that's not enough. Now everyone does that, so it needs a new set of innovation. The stuff that Bending Spoons did is like honestly, like I hadn't heard of this company before, but I'd heard of their apps.
Yes, me too.
And the apps are cool and they're innovative, and I feel hopeful.
They're beautiful.
That, they're going to like figure out the next amount of innovation. I mean, again, they wouldn't have bought it if they didn't if they didn't think they can do it.
Uri Geller would never have founded the company. If he didn't, oh wait, I'm a little getting confused.
So I was pissed when I was like, this had better be a Matrix reference and not a Uri Geller.
Oh, good. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Because the bending of spoons in the Matrix was real. So that's the difference. Just want to point that out.
It was definitely.
There it is.
Yeah,
Look at he's doing it. He's putting it up there. Look at that.
Got it.
How do you do that? Wow.
It's definitely a Matrix reference.
That's good.
I think they're too young to know who Uri Geller was.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to know who Uri.
One of the downsides.
The first book I ever bought. The first book I ever bought on Amazon. The first book I ever bought on the internet. Was my first e-commerce purchase ever. Was in like 1994, and it was a book called "The Truth About Uri Geller" by James Randi.
Oh my God!
James the Amazing Randy debunked.
James the Amazing Randy.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I heard bending spoons, I'm like, that better be a Matrix reference.
I'm thinking they're probably too young to remember Uri Geller, who was
thankfully
a famous psychic who did a sleight of hand thing that made it look like.
I can't bend the spoons here. There are fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
It was one of the.
James Randi had this great quote.
Go ahead.
We just remember because Uri Geller claimed that he was bending spoons. Literally, he would just take spoons. That was his trick. He was bending them with psychic powers.
Yes.
And James Randi, showed how he could also bend spoons in all sorts of ways.
Loved him, yeah.
And said, I'm not saying that Uri Geller isn't bending spoons with psychic powers. I'm just saying that if he is, he's doing it the hard way.
The great, amazing Randy.
It's low stakes. If you had telekinesis, I just feel like those are low stakes. Bending spoons.
Yeah, I would come up with something more interesting to do.
Feels like that.
Yeah. Actually, the problem with a loyal evangelical fan base is they'll turn on you.
Huh.
They can turn on you, and that's I think everybody who is buoyed up by these evangelical fans also realize there's a risk, and I think that at some point Evernote lost some of its luster long after you were gone.
Well,
I hope they find it again because it was a great program. It was way ahead of its time, and we all, it's like your Palm Pilot. It's something that you remember and remember with love and affection. Because what a great product it was.
Yeah, Instapaper. Remember all those as Marco
Instapaper.
Arment. I worked for Marco for a while, and then I bought a publication he started, and Marco is a fascinating guy. But Instapaper was like this great. It was that incredible era of needing to read things offline in a better format, and it felt like that. Also, it's one of those table stakes. You're saying is
built in every browser now.
Yeah, every browser. But it's like you needed this mass group of people who are loyal to specific apps, sometimes paying monthly or annual fees to get this very simple thing, readability. Well, one of the apps was readability, but then now this move towards greater accessibility, I think, across all platforms means that we get these things. I mean, accessibility. I have a friend who used to write about accessibility in design, and she was like, accessibility is something that it works for everybody. For particular people, it may help them access information better or tools, but accessibility should be for everyone, and I think it turns out to be, which is
it does. Everybody benefits. Yeah. Let me take
Leo.
Go ahead.
Leo was. I want to go back to something you said about OneNote and that it was very difficult to use. Was OneNote the app that was introduced as part of Microsoft's push towards a Windows tablet? Remember those big?
Oh, yeah.
Was that where OneNote came from?
I don't know, but remember Bill Gates was for 10 years flogging tablets to no avail. I'm sure you guys remember. One year I think it was Comdex, when they built houses in the parking lot of the Las Vegas Convention Center. And you'd go into the house. This is a big Microsoft booth. And you'd go in the house, and every room in the house had an actor with a tablet.
Oh, my gosh.
Mom was in the kitchen because it was, a while ago. Dad was in the den. They had upstairs. The kid was upstairs, and they were all pretending they were using their tablets,
and they were huge.
It was they were big, they were clunky,
massive.
they were awful. But yeah, you're probably right. That's probably what
I
OneNote.
think that's where OneNote came
Yeah, you're
from.
probably right.
Do you remember the story about that too? Is Gates was totally behind it, but because of the siloization at Microsoft and the fiefdoms that I think have been broken down a bit in the last decade, that just before I want to say the launch of the tablet, if I'm remembering this right, the person who was in charge of Excel said you can't have it for you can't have Excel for the tablet. I was just trying to find the story. It's probably buried in a book somewhere, but it wasn't sabotage. Just like, we're not going to let you use the apps on. So that killed it. I think if Excel had come out in a Microsoft tablet, even if it was imperfect, it might have been its killer app for enough people. But that's how that company worked.
VC.
Yeah.
When I was first raising money from Evernote, I got asked how we're going to compete with OneNote. Because it was already out, and it was, how are you guys going to compete with OneNote? And I said, well, some people are going to need more than one note.
Bill, you're a wordsmith. I love it.
That's
November 17th, 2002, Bill Gates announced OneNote.
Yeah.
I remember I was a OneNote refugee when I moved to Evernote. I was that was the solution for more than a decade for all my notes. Let's take a little break. We have much more to talk about. We have the best panel ever. So glad to have all of you. Dwight Silverman, Glenn Fleischman, Phil Libben. Our show today brought to you by Wealthfront. Wealthfront.com/twit. Wealthfront's goal, I'm really a fan of this company and their thinking and their ideas. I'm very excited to be able to share this with you. Wealthfront's goal is to make building long-term wealth easy. And they do it now in two ways, which is kind of interesting. For a long time, we've talked about their automated investing accounts. They now offer high-yield savings as well, all within a wonderful app, a beautifully designed interface. Is your bank keeping money that could be yours? Yes, they are. If you're earning less than Wealthfront's, get this, 3.30% API on your savings. 3.30. Federal interest rates, of course, have been going up. You've heard that. The Fed keeps raising rates. That's, means the banks are earning more on your savings, but they're keeping the money. According to the FDIC, the average U.S. bank has only raised their interest rates to 0.21%. You might want to check. What's that rate on your savings account? Wealthfront is offering their clients a rate that's about 15 times higher with the Wealthfront cash account. It's easy to sign up. You'll get unlimited transfers, fee-free, love that, up to $2 million in FDIC insurance through partner banks. So let me re-emphasize this. No account fees, no minimum balance, and if you go right now to wealthfront.com/twit, a free $50 bonus with an additional deposit of $500. I bet you have that much in your savings account, earning 0.2% or less. Don't let your bank keep the interest you should be earning. Move your savings to a high-yield account like Wealthfront and earn 3.30% API. Join the 500,000 people now who already use Wealthfront to earn 15 times more than the average bank. They're also great for investing. Wealthfront.com/twit to get started. You said the word table stakes. This is table stakes. Investments aside, if you're saving money and getting nothing, go to Wealthfront. At least do that. Wealthfront.com/twit. Your free $50 bonus with an initial deposit of $500 if you go to that address. Wealthfront.com/twit. This has been a paid endorsement for Wealthfront. We thank them so much for their support. I have to say that when I read these financial services ads, there is, and we do it on the onboarding call too, there are several pages of things I can't say, I have to say, that's highly regulated industry. Compare that. If I were to do an ad for, let's say, FTX, compare that with Tom Brady telling Giselle, I'm in, are you in? Let's all get in. A lot of celebrities now regretting their association with crypto in general and specifically with FTX. There's a big FTX lawsuit that holds the celebrities' feet to the fire, which kind of surprises me. Steph Curry, the Golden State Warriors, quarterback Tom Brady, his supermodel wife Giselle Bundchen, and Larry David all being sued for the ads they did for FTX. Now, I guess, is it true that if I had money in FTX that I'm out of luck, that I'm never going to see that money again? I think that's the case. Although I heard over the weekend that SBF, Samuel Bankman-Fried, was going around trying to raise money to pay people back. Like, who's going to give him money?
That's the optimism. I thought, I'm always quoting Matt Levine at Bloomberg because he writes a great column.
Very good. Yeah, I love
trying to describe the difference between liquidity and solvency, where as regards crypto exchanges, and it's a good read, and if I recall it correctly, it's kind of like, if liquidity has to do with whether you can, redeem funds, and solvency has to do with whether you can survive, more or less as a business entity. So if you have, if you have $1,000 of assets that are locked up and illiquid, then you may have a liquidity crisis if you have to redeem $1,000, but you still have the assets. So maybe someone will buy you, right? Solvency is you have $1,000 in deficits for every dollar in assets you have, and there's no way you get out of that. And he's saying SBF and FTX and MOUSE all have, solvency issues. So you can't raise money into an environment in which there's no hope of ever getting an investor to get a return on putting that money in. They might as well let all the chips fall and if possible, buy, the Enron, the guy who solved Enron after the fact, right, got as much money as he could for Enron shareholders, is in charge of the FTX. Oh, that's in dispute, too. He's in charge of the FTF bankruptcy, but there's a competing bankruptcy claim from the regulators in the Bahamas also.
Oh, Lord.
So anyway, but
what a mess.
You remember the Madoff thing? I mean, Madoff is a good example. As Bernie Madoff, ostensibly lied to people about the value of their holdings, but he didn't necessarily lose all their money. And in the end, through clawbacks and an incredibly rigorous effort, I think people got almost 100% back on what they initially put in. They just didn't get any return on it, so they lost out on the biggest expansion in value of their money over that period of time, if they put it in the S&P 500 or anything else.
Right before FTX went insolvent during the World Series, the umpires' uniforms actually had FTX. Jesus. He said, I'm going to buy the people they trust. The umpires had FTX.
Everybody loves an umpire.
Oh, my God. By the way, Phil has moved north a little bit in Japan. He's now in Nagano, taking a hot tub with the monkeys, apparently.
Yes, very nice.
By the way, apparently, so many tourists were bugging these monkeys in these hot springs that they've gotten very cranky, and they do not like their picture taken. So do not wake that one up behind you, Gillies.
Don't get too close.
Don't get too close. They're very.
I'm trying to moderate my comments.
The umpires are not being sued, but everybody else is, including Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin O'Leary, the host of Shark Tank. All of them did ads for FTX.
Well, the Larry David ad was like,
I think he's off the hook because he said no, right?
Right.
And then said, "Don't be a Larry."
He literally said, he literally said, I said, don't invest in this. It's a terrible idea. And they're like, don't listen to him. I don't know.
Don't listen to Larry.
That's great.
So there is a history. I didn't know this, but Jeff Jarvis, being the, I guess, antiquarian that he is, reminded us that this has happened before. Pat Boone did ads for a Zit cream that he claimed his daughter had used to cleaned up her skin, got sued, and was forced to pay over a lot of money as settlement and to make a public apology. There is apparently some burden upon celebrities. I did not know this, and from now on, I promise, Your Honor, I'm going to be very careful that they are responsible for their endorsements.
I got a good story about that, which is that I believe that if you endorse certain kinds of products, you're supposed to possess or have tried them. So
that's the rule. Yes.
Right. So I had a friend of a friend. Actually, they might be three friends away. A friend of mine had a friend whose friend was dating Tom Bosley's daughter. And Tom Bosley was
talk about a brush with fame.
There we go. That's three
cow.
people away. And Tom Bosley was the Glad Trash Bag spokesperson. And so this friend of a friend was over visiting his friend and Tom Bosley's daughter, and they opened the garage, and it was packed with boxes of Glad Trash Bags.
I use them.
This is great. He walks the talk. He talks the walk.
No, the FTC tells us. And I actually, when I'm leaving the radio show, but when I still work for them. But when working for Premiere, and that's the iHeart folks, I actually had to take every year a fabulous Flash-based ethics slideshow, and talking about the FTC rules. I cannot endorse a product I don't use. Now, this is interesting because that ad I just did says the SEC rules specifically say you cannot be a user of the financial instrument that you're. It's very weird. I cannot say I recommend them. I cannot say I am a client. And now they've added this. This is a paid endorsement. I think everybody's very nervous right now. But every other product, when I say if I say I use it, I use it. We're sticklers about that. And we'll have people say, "Can Leo endorse, this e-bike?" And Lisa will say, "Well, not unless he uses it. He can't. Are you going to send us one?" And he's going to try it out and and let you know then. And then they go, "No." And we say, "Well, FTC rules prohibit an endorsement." So I don't know. These guys, I mean, what would it take to use FTX? You'd just buy a thing. What is it you're buying? FT tokens?
Isn't that part of the alleged dispute between Tom Brady and Giselle, that he put a bunch of more money into, or do they both agree to do that? There was some story that came out, the veracity of which I'm not able to personally confirm. But
they are now divorced or divorcing.
Yeah. But
so
that's a strain. If you put hundreds of millions of dollars into something, it loses a lot of value. That possibly has an effect on a marriage.
Yeah.
If that's what was going on.
I don't know how this case will end up, but and it's not the FTC. It's a class action in federal court.
For now.
For now. I don't know how it'll end up. I mean,
it'll end up as an HBO movie.
Yeah, really. Oh, I can't wait. I can't. You know who's got the story that you want to option, by the way, if you're a major Hollywood producer watching this show, as many do, you got to go to Michael Lewis, because he's been interviewing SBF.
Shadowing him.
He's been he's got the best end now for his.
Isn't he in the shopping the movie rights right now? I thought that was
guarantee you he's.
I mean, he hasn't written the book yet, but
right.
No, it's
many Michael Lewis books have made excellent movies already, including The Big Short. And
has anyone had his? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the baseball film that they? Did? It's wonderful.
Moneyball.
That's great. That is a great film.
Yeah.
Has anybody had better timing than him? And you have to say, so that's me being. I don't think he was just lucky. I think he obviously had a sense of impending doom.
He's a good journalist, right? He knows who to follow.
I mean, because when he wrote Moneyball, that was just before the entire baseball world kind of like turned around sabermetrics, right? Like he was there at kind of the inflection point happening, as opposed to 3 or 5 years after it did.
Yeah, according to theankler.com, I don't know the reference, but I feel like it's a Hollywood reference. Hollywood is frenziedly trying to get Michael Lewis to option his book. Gotta be millions. I remember for a long time was a friend of a big Hollywood producer at Trigger Street, and he told me this story. Actually, I think he told us on one of the shows. He was the guy who got House of Cards for Kevin Spacey. He was Kevin Spacey's producer.
Oh yeah.
He told us the story of the Kevin Spacey, of how they got House of Cards. Some other big company had already bid money, and Dane got on the phone. Dana Bernetti got on the phone with Kevin, said, we got to buy this for you, and talked him out of it. I think they'd already sold it to HBO, and he got Netflix to talk him out of it. Anyway, he told me he was watching TV, saw the CNN story about the pirates taking over that, Captain Phillips freighter, and the rescue and the Navy SEAL Team 6 coming in and saving him. And he says, I was on the phone instantly. And, of course, he made a great movie, Captain Phillips. I'm the captain now. So that is, the Hollywood jumps on these things. They're looking for this. And what a great story this is going to be. I only hope that the producer, who should produce? David Russell? Who should produce this SBF
What should it be
movie?
called?
What should it be called? That's a good...
The Bigger Short.
Wait a minute. Where'd you end up now? You're in Norway? Where?
Yeah, it's a long show. It's a long show.
he's traveling the world.
I've got it. I got the title. The Funny Moneyball.
Funny Moneyball.
The big hair is not bad. The big hair is
Big hair.
not bad. Not
SBF. It's funny because the first time I got him on my radar, I thought this guy, just like you do with all these guys, we really worship these guys, don't we? I thought this guy's a genius. He comes out of Stanford, runs a hedge fund, and then says, "Wait a minute," and he was the whole effective altruism thing he was doing, where he put his money into good causes, and I thought this guy's incredible. Boy.
Yeah, this is seriously incorrect. He's MIT, not Stanford.
Oh, okay. MIT, pardon me.
Completely just
Let's get that right.
Yeah.
Are you a Stanford grad, I'm thinking?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
But a young wunderkind who ended up being, he's my daughter's age. That's what really hit me. He was worth at one point, I think, $92 billion in funny money.
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. It turns out no. Big donor to the Democratic Party, second largest donor to Joe Biden's 2020 campaign. Yeah, personally donating $5.2 million.
I've seen some people questioning should the Democrats be returning money they received from him, given the money was probably,
But it's been spent.
Commingled with.
It was spent on TV ads. How do you return it?
You just take it from other money. You raise other money to repay
That's
it.
right. You raise other money.
It's a funny, we did this, talking back to Elizabeth Holmes, like all these people, I think there's a desire in, celebrity technology journalism, right? Is we have a desire to anoint one person as the savior of humanity and who has all the right ideas about X. And Elon Musk has filled a really big part of that since Steve Jobs left us. We have Elon Musk fills so many different pairs of shoes there.
Yeah.
And Holmes was that. Remember Holmes, that famous story where she was on the cover of the T section of the New York Times, written by Mark Andreesen's wife, if I recall, in a slight conflict of interest that wasn't disclosed. It was later disclosed. I think it came out, but it wasn't.
Was that before she started talking like this, or was that after?
But it's the same thing, Sam Bankman-Fried showing up on covers, and it's like, this is what. Having lived through multiple waves of implosions in the market, I feel like one of the things that was different in, say, 2007, 2008, and is different now, is that companies made real things and had real revenue. And so when things went a little awry, they had something to fall back on, like actual business. And then the crypto market just sort of turned that back. We kind of wound the clock back much worse to 2001 era, where companies were, this goes to that substantive thing. You had companies like Pets.com that were shipping 20-pound bags of kitty litter.
By the way, they just did it too early, because we now buy bags of kitty litter through the mail. We have a whole subscription plan for kitty litter.
Somehow this is efficient.
Yeah, somehow got efficient. So just to be clear, SBF was born on the campus of Stanford University.
His parents are both Stanford professors.
His parents are professors at Stanford Law School. And he went to math camp, but MIT owns him. You're absolutely right.
Look, I don't think we should. To me, so Elizabeth Holmes actually pitched me when I was a VC.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I thought she was great. I did not pick up any red flags.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Wow.
I thought her voice sounded perfectly normal.
She didn't talk like that then, or was
I picked up I usually have a pretty decent, I think, like bullshit filter. I was very impressed with her. Just being honest, it'd be easy for me to be like, "Hey, I knew something."
No,
was
but
off
that's
right away.
reasonable, because what she
did not.
What you didn't know, what apparently George Shultz didn't know, is whether the technology was viable. But the idea
was great.
The idea was great,
world changing, and could have been a huge success. Why didn't you invest?
I was thinking about it. They were already at like $9 billion valuation, so it would have been a very large check. It would have been my first very large check. And I thought, well, I don't really understand how the technology works, and so I'm not really
smart.
I don't know. I can't really do it.
That's smart.
But I was going to do it. So I said, can I see, can I come over? Can I see the machine? Will you explain it to me how it works? And they were like, yeah, of course, absolutely. Like, come over anytime. We'll open it up. We'll show you. And then it just never quite got scheduled. And then they already wound up taking more money. And so I kind of missed the boat, and I felt bad. Honestly, I felt bad. I was like, oh man, I moved too slow. I'm not a good VC, which turned out to be true for other reasons. But like, I kind of thought, like, I should have just invested. I had this opportunity. If everyone wanted to be in this deal, she would have given it to me. I could have just written a check. And I didn't because I was too slow, because I had this, like, I wanted to see it. What would that have shown me? Like, let's say I showed up. Let's say they scheduled it, and I show up, and they opened the machine, and there was like a family of raccoons in there. Like, would I have been like, aha.
They might be good at blood assaying.
Well, and notice, by the way, that everybody on the board, nobody had expertise in the field, right? They were very careful about choosing Mad Dog Mattis and George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, influential people, but people who could not look at that machine.
They had a big DoD business. It made sense that those people were on the board. Again, like, I looked into it. They did a lot of business with the Department of Defense. That was their first customer for years. So it made total sense that they had DoD people. Wow. Like, I'm telling a story to say that I was impressed with her. The stuff that I checked out, and I regretted that I acted so slow that I didn't invest. And I regretted that for 3 or 4 weeks until the scandal broke. And then I stopped regretting it.
Then John Carreyrou came calling.
But that's what happened. And so, like, I can, like, but by the grace of not responding to my emails in time, that would have been me. Yeah. This is totally different with SBF. Yeah. That guy set off every single bullshit.
You knew you would, if you weren't asked to invest, or were you?
I was not a VC at that point.
Yeah.
No, I was not a VC at that point, but I told a lot of people.
Had he come in the door, you would have known. No,
I've been pretty public in my loathing of crypto.
Yeah.
For years, and SBF was worse than average.
Here's a question.
I don't like
Here's something I've been wondering about. I think if you're a crypto partisan, you would not be unreasonable to say, well, look, this was a scammer. This has nothing to do with crypto. The collapse of Bitcoin to $16,000 hurt a lot of companies that were over leveraged, but it isn't a black mark on the overall technology, or is it? And that's kind of the question. It is.
It is. As I said, the true value of any of these is zero. And anything that you put into it is on top of zero. And so at its core, it is a scam. And eventually, all of these people who are running these big exchanges are going to, I think, are going to come down. I think this is just the first. It's not the first, but it's the biggest.
Yeah.
I think there's still going to be a place for stable coins, which are a whole different thing, but not run by third parties.
We talked about stable coin or governmental central bank coins, digital dollars.
Those are totally different things, though.
Yeah, exactly. They're barely. Thing. I mean, right? They're not.
No,
they're not.
Stable coins are both.
But stable coins backed by. I'm sorry, not stable coins backed by other.
Well, a number of crypto. I got to say, a number of stable coins have collapsed. So
I don't mean like Tether or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, although. This is the complicated thing is I think that Tether, if they actually had this is where you get to the layers upon layers upon layers. Like, what is Tether actually still doing?
What is a stable coin? To tell us what it is.
It's supposed to be like a crypto reserve currency that you actually have, or a gold standard style currency where you actually have a one-to-one valuation that's of assets, or as close to one-to-one as possible, that's backing a similar amount of ostensible buying power in fiat currency. I mean, that's the intent. And Tether had claimed for a long time, and then had to change those statements, and is in the midst of a lot of things, that they actually had deposits that were actually liquid or close to as liquid as possible, cash and cash equivalents, equal to the amount of Tether they'd issued in, various currency denominations. I could see a central bank doing it, where the central bank was using it but it's not a stable. The question is it a stable coin when a central bank uses a cryptographically backed method of issuing currency or allowing currency to trade? They do it now. They just do it as an entry on a ledger that they retain, that the Fed or something manages.
And not really blockchain either.
I guess.
I feel the same way.
Records, right.
I feel the way about financial instruments that have the word stable in their name. The same way that I feel about seafood restaurants that have the word fresh in their name.
That's good. Don't order seafood in Colorado.
You're trying too hard.
Yeah,
you're trying too hard.
It's fresh.
Yeah, fresh.
So that stuff is like what you're talking. Like, central bank digital currencies. Yeah, of course.
That's a better. Sure, that's a better. Yeah.
They probably shouldn't be blockchain based. Blockchain is kind of stupid for that. But
no, I mean, right. Blockchain requires. I'm interested still in private blockchains where you have participants who all have are staked against each other, where it's not a arbitrary, anonymized participant based thing. But I think there's a valid case to be made for using, I mean, like, so DNS, which is a very technical thing, obviously, but at its root, I think DNS is a very effective distributed mechanism with certain centralized components that a lot of different, often parties that are in disagreement all agree to let run in a way that's verifiable. So like DNSSEC, like some of the cryptographically backed elements of DNS that have been gradually built up over the years are really effective centralized, decentralized things. And so I say we do have models of that, or even certificate authorities, revocation of certificate authorities, all that kind of thing. Those systems work, they're cryptographically based, and you have lots of parties whose interests aren't entirely aligned or the same modes of governance of countries and so forth. And it all generally works most of the time in a way that we find effective.
Yeah. So look, I before Evernote, I ran a company called Court Street. We were back when crypto meant cryptography, so we were a cryptography company. We sold, PKI, public key infrastructure systems to governments, to defense departments, to large banks, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, of course. Like obviously, there's like all sorts of digital systems that have been around forever. That are continuously improving. They just don't have anything to do with this like blockchain nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I don't want to say the only reason I like the blockchain, I say that, and then that's the last thing anyone hears, right? The thing that I find appealing about the notion of a blockchain is a way to create a permanent record that's globally accessible in a fashion, but I don't think it actually has a role in necessarily like financial transactions or the way it's been deployed. I think it is an interesting thing to
think of it as a decentralized database. There are lots of ways of doing that.
But that you can rely on, that tamper, like we have very few ways that you can ensure things.
Is it really tamper-proof, though?
Well, it's been tampered with.
Yeah.
It has been tampered with.
Not really. I mean, Bitcoin, right,
who would tamper with crypto or a Web3 thing? Right? Like,
Well, I would.
Exactly.
What would the incentive
It is the most tamperable thing in the universe.
It's tamperable.
Nothing is being tampered
Nor
with.
is it fully anonymous, right?
Yeah, it's not fully. It's de-anonymized.
Yeah.
Web3 is basically, if you look at the ingredients list for Web3, it's like 80% greed, 20% ideology, and like tiny amounts of interesting technological ideas. And by tiny amounts, I mean like this was processed in a facility that also handles nuts. Ace amounts of like interesting technology.
It's funny you should say that because I always think of it as a thin layer of peanut butter. On
like,
anything.
There's really no peanuts in there, but there were peanuts like 2 months ago in the same conveyor belt.
Phil, if you keep up this attitude, I don't think you're ever going to invest in the next Theranos. I don't think they're going to ask you.
And a lot of the, and like, so the 80% greed, whatever, that's I don't need that. The 20% ideology is some of that ideology, not all, but some of it makes sense to me. Like some of it I like. Of course, like traditional financial institutions tend to be pretty exploitative, and like, we need non-exploitative financial institutions and all sorts of stuff. Like I can get behind most of the ideology behind crypto and Web3. Not all of it, but most of it. A lot of it is just sort of libertarian fantasies, but I can get behind most of it.
It makes me nervous that it's really Andreessen Horowitz's vision for the future of the web. I don't, that kind of bugs me. It seems like A16Z is who's going to make the money on this one.
Well, it ain't playing out very well, so they may.
Web3's going just great. What are you talking about?
Have you seen Twitter's going just great? I hope that's a new.
Also based on the Molly White timeline technology, which is fantastic.
Molly White, one of my favorite new people to have found in the past like 6 months.
Isn't she amazing?
Fantastic.
Yeah,
really good.
She did, just for those who don't know what we're talking about, we've mentioned it many, many times. Web3 is going just great, which is a tragic. But if you look at the bottom on the lower right-hand corner, it shows you how much money has been burned. Oh, actually, I have to change the setting. Start at total amount scammed and subtract as you scroll, or start at zero and as you scroll. That's the so-called grift counter. Maybe my grift counter isn't working because by now it should be in the billions of dollars. So somebody has created she open sourced the timeline software. It's on GitHub. So somebody has done Twitter is going just great, or going great. And that is an equally wonderful timeline of horror.
I'll give you, there's a great use case that was made for, in fact, PayPal was making this case briefly, and I think they've backed off from it last year, which was crypto was a way to help worldwide remittances. There's some hundreds of billions of dollars that people who are economic and other immigrants to other countries send back home, and the average rate they pay is upwards sometimes of 8 to 10%, and it's a huge middleman thing. And the UN is set as a goal to reduce that. I want to say below 5%, maybe it's to 3%. They have one of their Vision 2025 or whatever. And there's been a lot of work worldwide because every dollar that's taken from an economic migrant working in a different country, or even in the same country sending money back to their family or to others, is just sort of stolen out of their pocket. There's very low costs involved when they're giving cash to an institution that's then just literally transferring it somewhere else. So that's a wonderful area that's right for development, and people are working on it. Doesn't necessarily need the blockchain. It was sold as, well, maybe we could use crypto to solve this because the fees would be very small. And then, of course, the fees went up crazily on transactions. The whole, Bitcoin and Ethereum went through the roof in terms of the cost, and that whole market disappeared. So I do hope that there's actual attention continuing to be paid to reduce the cost of people sending money home. But crypto doesn't seem to be the answer there.
Yeah.
100%. Like not only do you not need blockchain to do it, blockchain gets in the way.
Yes.
Like, of course it should be cheaper to transfer money everywhere. Of course. But why isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it because it costs Visa, MasterCard or SWIFT too much money to send those electrons? No, it costs that much money because somebody likes it. So if you want to make a non-exploitative financial system, the way to do it is to make a non-exploitative financial system. Make TransferWise, right? Like TransferWise or Wise, I think they're just renamed, right? Like, they let you send money to lots of places and they give you the cheapest possible rate.
Yeah.
And it's not blockchain, because it turns out all you need to do is be like, I'm going to make a bank and I'm not going to screw people.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with burning down the whole tech stack. It has to do with trying to make something non-exploitative, which I totally support.
Right.
TransferWise, right, which is Wise now. I've used them for years as a small business person, where I have to send sometimes relatively large when I get a book, letterpress printed in London. Leo, I have to send money to thousands of pounds to a printer in London. It's very complicated to do that, and I've used that service because, they use technology to actually make things better and to make
I am glad to know
real
about
time
this.
and transparent.
Because we use PayPal to pay people overseas, but they charge a lot.
Yeah, Wise charges the least. It's not that they charge the least, they expose all their fees. So sometimes there are better alternatives. Sometimes I've done a direct wire through my credit union, but often I can use this. And the money, there's some people, a podcasting editor I pay from time to time in Canada, and he gets the money sometimes 10 minutes after I initiate the transfer.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
We have many payees out of the U.S., and I don't want to say overseas, because they're not overseas to themselves. We're overseas to them, but outside of the U.S. and we that's good. I'll tell Lisa, because this is good. Yeah.
So I have no financial. I assume Phil has no financial interest with them. It's great when you find something where you're like, this actually works and saves me money, and it's technology done right.
And I understand that for a lot of people, Jay-Z started a school about crypto in an underserved, poor neighborhood, because he felt like it was going to help people who have been underserved, or even worse, redlined by traditional financial institutions to create their own financial future. It's unfortunate, and that's the problem, because Bitcoin is not the answer. There are answers, but that's not the answer. Crypto's not the answer.
There's no shortcut to it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think in general, my heuristic on this stuff is when you look at anything that's really screwed up in the world, and financial institutions is definitely one of them, but you pretty much look at anything that's really screwed up in the world and you kind of ask, well, why is it screwed up? The answer is almost all the time because somebody likes it that way.
And then you have to say why. Cui bono, as they say.
Yeah,
right?
and the analysis is well, who likes it?
Right.
And what do they like about it? And what can we give them to like more than what they currently like about it?
Right.
And very rarely is the answer, well, why is something screwed up in the world? Oh, it's because we need to burn things to the ground and have a completely different stack.
That's not a good answer.
That's not usually.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, but look, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because us four old guys are totally going to kill Web3 and crypto. And I assume that everyone that's heard it is like, well, we're done with this. And
well, I've been beating this drum for a while. When this all first started, we were very interested in the technology, as a lot of technologists were. but it's become pretty clear over the last year. Started with NFTs, and it's become pretty clear. And I think to answer my initial question, it sounds like even though FTX doesn't tarnish all of crypto, it is kind of an eye-opener that in the long run shows us this is not the path.
Both things can be true at the same time. FTX is almost certainly, a giant scam, and regardless of crypto or not, it's just like its own thing. Again, when
and he's just put up a sign, which I have to read now because 90% of the audience doesn't see your sign. Not legal advice, not financial advice. This is all as I remember it, but my memory might be faulty in parts. That's great. Can I have that for my show? That's wonderful.
Yeah. This is a direct quote from SBF. This is
that what SBF said?
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, this is a direct quote.
That's good.
Boy.
And so it's
Trumpian in its brilliance. Really.
Yeah, it's probably FTX is a giant scam that would have been a scam even if it wasn't crypto, and at the same time, crypto is a scam too. Are these two scams operating at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Are these valid technologies, valid advanced technologies that the scammers and the criminals get to first and ruin it for the rest?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question, but I don't think so, because again, I built some stuff, right, that's like, I guess, Web 2 and some stuff in Web 1. And we built stuff before there was hype around it, right? We weren't like, oh, look at us, we're building Web 2.0. We built things, and then millions of people used them and got benefit from it. And by we, I mean like Evernote, but also like Dropbox and Uber and Box and all that stuff. And before that, Yahoo and Google and Amazon. And millions and millions and millions of people used it and loved it and got value out of it. And there wasn't hype. It was like, we weren't saying that this is like some new thing. We just build stuff that works. And it was mostly built by engineers. And then Web3, the engineers, like, for the most part, there's actually not a lot of interesting technology in here. It's not a technologist thing. I think the reason, Leo, that you're kind of skeptical about it is like, your history is like you're a tech person, and crypto's not tech. Crypto's finance.
Yeah.
A bunch of the finance bros got involved, and there's just gibberish, like all finance people. And they started like hyping this Web3 thing before there's a single use case that's actually being used by millions of people and getting value that isn't like self-referential, that isn't about buying more crypto and scamming other people out of like crypto. And so like this is a case where like I understand that yes, there should be some, if we're gonna claim what the previous generation was Web 2, then of course there's gonna be something called Web 3 because 3 is a larger number than 2. And it comes afterwards, and I get it, and somebody will build something, but it's not going to be based on the blockchain because the blockchain is a pretty idiotic idea, technically. Like, it's kind of interesting intellectually, not really, but technically, like, almost nothing can be built on it that's real, and nothing has been built on it that's real, and it's been long enough. Where's the real stuff? Where's the stuff built on blockchain? Again, that isn't self-referential, that isn't about, like, speculating on other blockchain stuff, right? Like, the first book, like, it would be as if when Amazon got started, for a while, you could only buy books about how to sell books on the internet. It's like all the books on Amazon were just like other how-to books about how to sell books on the internet. And they'd be like, see, it's successful. Look at all these books we have about how to sell books on the internet.
Make money at home in your spare time.
It would be like if YouTube got started and like all of the videos on YouTube was about like how to post videos on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, but that's what Web3 is. It's all about just like more Web3 speculation, and there isn't anything.
It's circular. It doesn't.
Right.
It's just. It's good because it's good. It's good because it's good. Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the actual World Wide Web, is working on just what you talked about, kind of a next generation web. He says, ignore Web 3. Web 3 is not the web at all. He says.
Nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Who came up with the term Web 3?
Mark Andreessen.
Where did that come from?
Probably him. It wasn't Zuckerberg, I don't think. So we woke up one day and everyone was talking about it and nobody could define it. It was great.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. It wasn't me.
It's according to A16Z, Web 3, we deserve a better internet.
We do.
Web 3, the third generation of the internet, a group of technologies that encompasses digital assets, decentralized finance, blockchains, tokens, and DAOs, baby.
No.
That's not the internet we deserve.
Internet 2? Whatever happened to Internet 2?
We're living in
Internet
it.
2?
Yeah.
We're living in it.
No, that was like a faster
Web
network,
2.0. Remember Web 2.0? I think it was.
Web 2.0 was web apps, right? I mean, Web 2.0 was sort of. It was like interactive pages without reloading.
It was. Remember Ajax? It was Ajax.
It's still there. It's just not called that anymore.
It's React right now.
I did a lot of low-level Ajax programming.
Yeah.
It was learned some low-level JavaScript.
There's a bunch of people that who aren't technologists and who aren't finance people. And to them, which is most of the world, right? Most of the world is neither technologists nor finance people. And to them, we may look the same. Because we're both like sort of like babble a lot and use like weird language. And so I can see why for many people in the world they would confuse technology with finance. But we're pretty different people.
We're different. We're the nerds.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. I have some final stories to wrap up. I could go for hours with you guys. This is, for me, is like my eyes are opened. The scales have fallen. I'm going to throw my Bitcoin wallet into the sea. Virtually.
The open sea.
Don't throw it into the trash heap.
Open sea.
You have to pay someone to dig it out of the trash heap in 10 years.
He's never going to get it. Glenn Fleischman is here. Glenn.fun. 2 N's, but lots of fun. Mr. Dwight Silverman, author.com/D Silverman, and the wonderful Phil Libin. MMHMM.app. That's how he makes it snow, man. That's how he does it. We are going to take a little break, come back with about 12 very quick stories, just because I want to wrap it up, and a couple of obituaries, too. Our show today brought to you by ExpressVPN. We talk a lot about VPNs, the idea that you protect your privacy online if you use a VPN, that you protect your security if you're an open Wi-Fi access point, that you can watch, Netflix in Japan if you like manga. Those benefits are real for a VPN. In effect, you take your browsing and you encrypt it, and then you emerge into the public internet somewhere else. But I got to point out, it's really important that you choose the right provider, because everything you're protecting yourself against with your VPN is suddenly available to the server, the other end. When you emerge, the encryption goes away. You've got to choose a VPN provider who cares as much about your privacy and security as you do, who takes the money. And by the way, never trust a free VPN, ever, because they have to monetize somehow. How do they do it? You. So takes the money you pay them, a reasonable, fair amount of money, and invests it in servers all over the world. Good bandwidth for every one of those servers. Rotates their IP addresses so that it's fresh every time you use it, and somebody who takes the time to make sure that your privacy is 100% protected. That's ExpressVPN. There was a great article I recommended if you're at all interested in Bleeping Computer about how ExpressVPN works. They use a custom Debian distribution that wipes the drive on reboot, and they reboot every day. So even if they were logging your activity, it'd be gone every morning when they started up fresh. But they're not logging because they also invented something called Trusted Server, which is a VPN server that runs in RAM only, sandboxed. It cannot write to the hard drive. So when you press that big button on your ExpressVPN app, it launches that server in RAM. It disappears when you close it, and that's it. And we know it works. We know it works because they have independent third-party audits that say, yes, they adhere to their privacy policy. Yes, Trusted Server works as stated. It's just really good. They're now using something new called Lightwave. This is a new VPN protocol that they engineered to make user speeds faster than ever. I know sometimes when I talk about VPNs, people say, well, I don't want to slow my connection down. ExpressVPN is so fast, you'll forget you're using it. In fact, I often forget and leave it on, which is fine. You can stream video in HD quality, no buffering. It's thanks to this great Lightwave VPN protocol. Really, really cool. ExpressVPN runs on everything you've got. Your Android, your iOS device, your Windows PC, your Mac, your Linux, your Chromebook. You can even use ExpressVPN on your router. They sell routers now with ExpressVPN on the router. And it's not just me saying this. Business Insider, The Verge, many other tech journals rate ExpressVPN the #1 in the world for those reasons. Now, you say, all right, well, it's not free. How much? It's not much. About $7 a month. And I'm telling you, you pay any less than that, That's because they're taking advantage of you. Protect yourself with the VPN I use and trust. Go to expressvpn.com/twit. They've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can verify everything I say is true. When you buy a 1-year package, you'll get 3 months free. That brings the price down to less than $7 a month. This is the key. You got to trust the server. You got to trust the server. I trust ExpressVPN. I think you should too. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank them so much for supporting This Week in Tech. And we thank you when you use that address. When you buy ExpressVPN, then they say, oh, those ads work. And they buy more of them. expressvpn.com/twit. We had a great week on Twit this week. We've prepared a little video presentation. We didn't use them. Maybe we should have watched.
I think Charles Hayden Savage is on the line. Am I correct?
Yes. Charles Hayden Savage is here. And just to be clear, for those of you who aren't, up to the latest hip thing, I'm actually Steve Martin here on the phone with my old friend Leo.
Previously on Twit, the tech guy.
The reason I'm calling in is because there's a little announcement.
I wanted you to tell people so they wouldn't, get mad at me. You cheer them up.
Ladies and gentlemen, by the end of this year, Mr. Leo Laporte will be retiring from the radio. Is that accurate, Leo?
That is accurate.
Wow. I mean,
I've been doing this show almost as long as you lived in the Arconia.
All about Android.
I'm going to be reviewing the Logitech G Cloud gaming device. I don't know, man. When you compare it against the Steam Deck that does a ton more, I feel like the price is off. If this was $100, $150 cheaper, I feel like it would be a no-brainer.
Today on This Week in Space, who is Q? We visit with John Delancey.
The closest that I could say is that he was an omnipotent being who was too stupid to know it. Roddenberry kind of snuck up behind me and said, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. He was giving me a little bit of insight into the world that for the last 30 years has continues to reveal itself to me.
If you missed Twit this week, you missed a lot.
That's my last question.
Okay.
All right. And Micah, this will be your department.
All right, stretching. I'm ready.
I have some shortcuts.
Wow.
I'm telling you, this guy's good.
Okay.
He sent us his shortcuts. Micah is analyzing them now.
Steve Martin?
Cool. Yeah.
I'm going to have to tune into that episode later.
He was that you pretty much saw. He wasn't there that long.
Still.
I owe Twitter for knowing Steve. Steve listens to the shows. I did not know that. But he DM'd me on Twitter, said, hi, this is Steve Martin. You don't have to answer this, but I'm a big fan. And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to answer that. Why would anyone want to talk to Steve? And we formed, that was 15 years ago. We formed a friendship.
That's lovely.
Nice guy.
That's how I got to know Roseanne Cash a little bit. Was through
same
Twitter.
thing. I think that's why Twitter
back when it was
for
small.
so many of us. And Steve, remember, he did a whole book of his tweets. He was the funniest guy on Twitter. Really good stuff. A little less a Twitter guy these days.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him. I didn't want to put him on the spot. He's a very sweet
He's a cartoonist now. He's a cartoon writer with Harry Bliss.
Yes, his Harry Bliss. Well, that's what that's how it happened. Is he sent me his new book and he said, "I missed talking to you." He autographed it, and I said, "Oh, well, we can handle that."
That's
but it's a very funny book. Have you seen it?
I've got the first one. Is there a second one now?
He did the Pigeons book, and his newest just came out. See, I'm giving him a plug. He hates it. He hates it when I give him plugs. He always says, I plug the book, and he goes, no, Leo, you don't have to do that. The plug is, his new book is with Harry Bliss. It's called Number One is Walking. It's all right. You don't have to go get it. It's all right. Number One is Walking. I highly recommend it. It's his memories of his life in the movies. And it's very funny. Harry Bliss is a great illustrator. I don't know if it was praise or not, but I said, Steve, this reminds me a lot of Mouse by Art Spiegelman.
Wow.
Minus the Holocaust thing.
Holy cow.
Yeah, but it was.
I saw some of this in the New Yorker. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really
this is
good.
Great.
But it's It's beautifully drawn, and then there's a bunch of cartoons. I said, Steve, how does that work? He says, yeah, I write the punchlines, and then Harry does the cartoon.
It's Steve Martin is the most admirable person for figuring out what stage of his career he's in. His autobiography was so wonderful in talking about how.
So this is the sequel to Born Standing Up.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. And this one's illustrated. Born Standing Up, the way that he said, he spent so long trying to achieve the pinnacle of his career, and then he realized he's standing there on stage in this massive auditorium, and people are saying his lines as he's saying them, and he was like, that's kind of it.
Comedy.
And,
I'm done.
And then he moved on, and how many now he's in his fourth or fifth successful different reincarnation of himself, like
There's
Stephen Fry or something.
Phil has the book. I didn't realize that. My Life in the Movies. So it picks up where Born Standing Up ends. Talking about how he got into movies, and it ends with him saying, I'm saying goodbye to the movies, or maybe the movies say goodbye to me. He's moved on. He does the show he does with Martin Short, not just the TV show Only Murders in the Building. That's wonderful, but he also does a stand-up show with Martin that's hysterical.
I did not know about that.
Oh, if you get a chance to see that.
He's so busy, and his band.
The Steep Canyon Rangers, he plays with them. He does... he tours still with Martin Short. They call it a night you'll forget for the rest of your life. And it's them and just funniest things you've ever seen. I mean, you're belly laughing.
I like to model my career after him, except that not the funny part. I'm not funny. But the professional reinvention and finding new volunteer things. Really I just love what he's done.
He is a novelist. He's a super sweet, smart guy. I mean, he's writing Apple shortcuts. What the hell? I was like, really? yeah, I got some shortcuts. And then they want him to do some other things. So anyway, it was really fun to get him on. And because he's had so many careers, I thought it appropriate for him to say that I'm leaving something I've been doing for 46 years, since 1976. My first love was radio. But podcasting scratches that itch. What is this? This is the same thing as radio. And I don't really need to work for some. So part of this is I never really felt like, well, I could probably I could quit my day job and just do podcasting. Finally, after 15 years, I go, maybe this thing, this could work out. Okay, I can quit my day job finally. So I'm just leaving that radio show, the premier radio network that I work for. AM radio is not the most vital industry these days.
But the reach, the number of miles it goes.
Well, it's pretty neat. And the people I reach are generally older people who are baffled by technology, and those people need help. So somebody's going to take the show. Rich DeMuro from KTLA, he was on CNET. He's a great young guy, knows his stuff. He's going to help those old people with their printer problems, so I don't have to. Thank God.
I know that audience very well. With my writing, I have an aging audience of people aging along with me. And,
okay, a couple of quick stories that I thought everybody should know about. The FCC has finally released its U.S. broadband internet maps, which, of course, they're terrible. Yeah. But the good news is you can go to the map, enter your address, and correct it. So if it's often the case, I'll enter in our business address here. And it should know it, but it doesn't.
That's good. It means you haven't stored your address in some way someone else can go.
Yeah, because isn't that weird that nowadays you'll enter an address and it'll go, oh, you mean there? And I go, yeah. How did you know that? So they say that we have nothing. So I could fix that. It doesn't look like we have any internet at all. But they will tell you what they think you have, and you can say, no, they're lying. I'm not getting anywhere near that.
That's good.
And that kind of stuff. So do correct it. Go there. It's broadbandmap.fcc.gov. This is a long-promised broadband map the FCC has been working on for some years. It's finally out. Broadbandmap.fcc.gov. The Earth weighs 6 ronnagrams. I knew you'd want to know that. We have a new thing. What do you call these?
Scientific. It's an SI unit.
Yes, International System of Units. The last time they added new units was 1991, when they added zetta and yada. There's zettabytes and yottabytes. There's also, maybe you didn't know this, a yada meter, which is 24 zeros, one followed by 24 zeros.
It's what my grandfather would say. You got a yada chutzpah.
A yada bytes you got. If you got a lot of bytes, you got a yada. So, so there was a problem because Google started using hellabytes and Bronto bytes. And that is not approved by the official intergovernmental organization that's responsible for this, partly because they're alphabetic. So every letter's been used now except R and Q. So you couldn't use Bronto bytes or hellabytes. Those are already in use. So they had to use R and Q, although hellabytes would have been pretty cool.
I did not know.
Yeah, so R and Q are the new ones. Ronna or Ronno and Quetta, Quetta, or Queto. These are the new metric prefixes, the world's largest and smallest measurements. When it ends with an A, it's large. When it ends with an O, it's small. So you have a kilometer. No, it's the other way. I don't know. I don't understand this stuff. No. The larger prefixes end with A. The smaller in O. So
I see.
Yeah.
Most of them, but not all of them, of course.
Apparently not kilogram. Yeah.
Kilogram.
There's no kilogram.
And micro. Yeah. A quecto.
But nanometer and nana. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway. So I just wanted to tell you. So you'd have this to use. It's the first time in 30 years new prefixes have been added. The 27th General Conference on Weights and Measures, which meets every 4 years at Versailles, because why not, has now proclaimed the two new things. The Earth, now we can say, weighs 6 ronnagrams. That's a 6 followed by 27 zeros. Jupiter is 2 quettagrams. That's a 2 followed by 30 zeros. So, 27, then you add 3, and there's 30. So the Ronna is 27 zeros. The Quetta is 30 zeros. No hellabytes or Bronto bytes. Okay. Nothing more to say about that, but just wanted to let you know.
What are they going to do next? They're out of letters?
Yeah, they're out of letters. We can't. Sorry, stop.
Alphabets.
I don't know what they're going to do. That's a good question.
Emoji. It'll be like...
They'll go to hex.
Yeah.
That's always the solution.
Umlaut U.
Yeah, it's diacrit. I don't know. That's a good question. What do we do? I think everybody was very inspired by the Artemis 2 a.m. launch. Late night, beautiful launch. They're on their way tomorrow. They arrive at the moon.
Was anybody shocked by how fast I was watching it? And they're like, T-minus 0. It was like, and it was off. And I was like, I can't think of another launch in which it was just free of Earth that quickly.
You're right, because it's the largest rocket we have ever made.
Incredible.
I was a little nervous that because they're using hydrogen, that it was very leaky because it's a small molecule. It's a tiny molecule. It's the smallest molecule. But they figured it out, I guess, and they got rid of the leaks. So
the flight plan is, or the trajectory is pretty extraordinary. A lot of swings around this and that, and a lot of fun.
Oh, it's a wide. In fact, what was the site that Rod Pyle was on, the tech guy, and he gave us a site, a NASA site for that's really cool simulation of Artemis, and you can see the orbit, which is very eccentric. Is that the word one uses for eccentrics?
I don't think it's eccentric. I think it's just it's a complicated.
It is complicated.
It's complicated.
It allows you to have a camera view of either the orbit or the Earth as the spacecraft sees it now, or the moon as the spacecraft sees it now.
So it's NASA.gov. It's /specials/track Artemis. We're looking at it right now. There's Artemis.
That's great.
You can get a tour of. I'm not going to do the tour, but you can see there's the moon.
That's great.
It's getting close, right? They're almost there.
It's incredible.
This is a simulation. You can obviously move it around. You can get the mission view as well and see the crazy orbits that it's going to do and all of this.
It's great. I think ever since NASA's been doing this now for since the 70s. They did it with this thing where you swing around other planets to pick up gravity or to change trajectory. It's the kind of thing that sounds more science fiction-y, I guess, than it is.
It's a slingshot.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome. I think they did that with Voyager to get it Voyager 2 to get it over to
Jupiter.
The outer planets, right? The two.
Yep.
Joe says the orbit is not eccentric; it's just misunderstood. Yeah, it's not the orbit that the final mission. I asked Rod, who's he's the editor-in-chief of Ad Astra, is at the National Space Society, an expert, his co-host on This Week in Space. He's the host of our This Week in Space show. His co-host is Tarek Malik at Space.com. I said, Rod, what's the projection? He said, well, Donald Trump said we'd be on the moon in 2 years, 2025, but he says my money's on 2027. But we are going back to the moon. We will have an orbital space station on the moon, and it's all preparatory towards going past the moon and on to Mars. So very exciting for us geeks.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, beautiful launch.
And the web stuff is super cool.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's face it. NASA understands that there's a big part of their mission is PR. They got to get Congress to give them the money, and to do that, they got to get us to tell our member of Congress, give them more money.
Yeah, well, it was almost the James Webb 3, sponsored by FTX.
Yeah, guess why not? Yeah, James Webb. Turns out the NASA administrator, when many gay people were not allowed to work at NASA, so there's some concern. But they're not going to rename the telescope. But
yeah, they keep reviewing it. But
I like the James Webb 3. That's funny.
Yeah,
this capsule may have been made in a factory that produces nuts.
But it's so cool, like the pictures you're getting back from that. I love
beautiful.
NASA is like the thing that reminds me more than anything else. Like every so often,
humans are not so bad. Yeah,
yeah, and like it's kind of awesome, and there's like real stuff to be psyched about.
This mission has, I think, 14 very high quality cameras. The last time we did this, they had to send film back to be processed.
Thank God.
Now we can get digital shots, and the moonrise, the Earthrise, some just stunning shots. We're going to get beautiful images of the moon.
I did a story a few years ago for The Economist when Curiosity launched, and did a bunch of Curiosity-related stories, and one was about the cameras on board, because I think it had, forgotten the total number, I think it had 13, which was unprecedented. And one of the people I talked to was at a contractor, and he said, well, this is the first time any camera I've designed has actually landed on a planet. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I had them, and he listed 3 doomed missions that his cameras have been on. So across his entire working career of 20-something years at this point, the work that he had done, and finally, and then NASA's firing on all cylinders, they say, for the last 15+ years, and commercial firms as well, ESA as well, there's been so many successes.
SpaceX, let's give them credit.
Picturing spending your entire working career having all of your cameras blow up in space or crash on landing, and then suddenly it's like, oh, well, 5 of the ones in the Curiosity are ones I had my hands on. It's like,
amazing.
Pretty slick. But amazing to be at that time when you can have that many cameras and they can send back data from relay stations and things.
It's just
look, you could have been an engineer working, on the Bluetooth consortium for the past 30 years, your entire career, and it still can't connect to a phone.
I can't hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel bad for them. It's not entirely their fault.
Oh gosh. A couple of obituaries. We always end the show when there are people to memorialize, and I'm sad to say there are 2 this week. The great science fiction author Greg Bear passed away. If you have not read his books, I couldn't recommend them more highly. I loved Blood Music. Really fascinating. Darwin's Radio. Many awards. He's won over 50 books. This would be a good excuse to go out and read some Greg Bear novels. Hugo Award-winning science fiction author passed away this week. And a book that I read years ago that Elon maybe should read now, the author of The Mythical Man Month, Frederick Brooks, designed OS 360, IBM operating system, discovered the software Tar Pit, and wrote one of the great classics of all time in 1975, The Mythical Man Month.
Have you read that book recently?
Not recently, no. Why? Is it terrible?
It does not hold up.
Oh,
I remember reading that book. I remember reading that book in high school and being like, oh, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
It was great.
Me too.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
So the premise, as I remember it, is that you can't throw money at software projects. The more people does not make a better product.
Yeah. I mean, the core idea, I think, is a really solid idea. I think the book is a book of its time. It was like pretty sexist, and like it's what you expect from engineering culture to have been like, and kind of the IBM 360. And I think maybe one of the reasons it doesn't hold up is because the basic idea has been embraced so much that it's like it hardly seems worth.
Everybody knows it now. Yeah.
So now what's left when you read it is like the cringe.
It sounds like he evolved is the interesting part. Stephen Bellevin, who's a great former AT&T Bell Labs cryptography and other fellow, he wrote a wonderful tribute to Brooks, who had been his mentor and had really helped him in a lot of different ways. And it sounds like Brooks he said he literally described it with a capital C, a calling to go into teaching. And it sounds like he was constantly testing and reevaluating his ideas. So I think the sad part is he didn't write a mythical Person Month 2 book, because it probably would have been a lot more interesting based on 30 more years of his working and teaching life.
Well, I still have my copy. I'll pull it out. And a tip of the hat to two very important people in technology. And, regardless, he changed a lot of things. Fred Brooks.
Absolutely changed my life. So
yeah, there you go, right? Okay. You are now on the drone ship, Of Course I Love You, I believe, waiting for something to land. I didn't know this, but all of those weird drone ship names come from the Ian Banks Culture series.
Yeah.
So I've downloaded all those audiobooks now, and they're on next on my list to read. I thought Elon was just a weirdo.
Not just a weirdo.
Not just any weirdo.
There are. I have read articles that say that he is so influenced by Ian Banks' notion of artificial intelligence that this is, in fact, if you want to understand Elon, it's a critical thing to read.
Interesting.
So I'm now embarking on the Culture series. Phil, such a great pleasure to have Phil Libin on with us. Not just any weirdo, he's our weirdo, and we are so glad to have him on all-turtles.com. And don't forget, the app with the funny name, MMHMM.app. Anything you want to plug or mention or say, it's your chance here.
I think, it's a good, what you just said is interesting about Elon. There's always like lists of books that he reads, and he is, I think, quite influenced by that and talks a lot about his reading habits and his list, and then contrast that to the famous SBF quote, right, about like books. I don't read books. Books are for dumb people. I've never read a book in my life.
Books. Yeah,
kind of should have seen it coming.
No, I respect people who read, and I do think that a lot of the world we live in today is inspired by the scientists, the technologists, and the engineers who read science fiction as kids, who thought, that'd be cool if we could just make that. So science fiction authors are pretty darn important. Phil, always a pleasure. We will get you back soon. Absolutely. Now that I know it's okay to ask you, we will ask you. Glenn Fleischman, on the other hand, is so tired of us asking him that he probably needs a break.
I just sit here all the time, and occasionally I tune in and you film me.
You haven't even changed your shirt since the last show.
No, come on. I have a different shirt every show. No,
okay.
Check the file. Check the files. I have developed an extensive array of colorful shirts.
Maybe that's it. They just all look the same. Glenn.fun with 2 N's is his website. You read him in many places. He's, of course, a podcaster. You hear him on The Incomparable, many other great podcasts. He is, I'm so proud to say, now on our Mastodon server, so you can talk to him there at twit.social. In fact, he even put it up at the top of his page. I love that.
My page.
You replace Twitter with Mastodon and Insta and Flickr. Great to have you.
Fun place to talk. Thank you for having me back.
I think we'll see more of you soon. I know. Because Jeff loves talking about flongs.
That's right. I'm off to Europe on Tuesday for a couple weeks.
Where are you going, and how are you going?
Train. I'm flying to Europe, not by boat. My older kid has taken his gap year. He's taken a few weeks in Europe, bumming around. So I'm meeting him in Berlin in a few days, and then we're going to Prague, Vienna, Ljubljana, Venice. Wonderful. And it's going to be one of those running through town things. We've got 2 weeks, and we're going to go through 5 cities and see a lot of museums and climb a lot of mountains, see some old friends, and it'll be a hoot.
He's going to far-flung places, somebody in the chat room
Far-flung, oh my God.
Have a wonderful trip. That sounds so great. Will we see pictures on Instagram?
I'll post pictures. I'm going to be visiting a letterpress printer in Ljubljana, of course. Letterpress printer and stone carver in Ljubljana, Slovenia. It's one of my stops.
Something like letterpress and stone carving. They seem like they go
Very
together.
different feels, but they go together, and I'm going to be interested to see his studio, which would be a lot of fun.
Mr. Dwight Silverman, old friend, old pal. Find all of his stuff. It's so cool at Authory, AUTHORY.com/D Silverman.
Yep. It's got the Chronicle column that I do that runs every week, publishes online on Friday, print on Sunday, and also all of my stuff from Forbes when I was there for about 20 minutes. And
I was going to ask, but
yes. and I have a question though about Phil. For Phil, you have a podcast, Phil?
I used to have a podcast. We used to do the Old Turtles podcast.
You should do one, or Leo should put you on. And
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're great.
I want to listen to you before I go to bed every night, just talking calmly about technology.
Yes. If the CEO thing doesn't work out, you could do stand-up.
There's the problem.
So, and Glenn, when you go to Germany, you go to Berlin.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful restaurant, very quirky restaurant in the basement of the Opera House in Berlin. Yeah? And you should hit that up. Get the soup. The soup is fantastic.
I will look that up. People are recommending also there's a restaurant that recreates East German delicacies, and I've thought,
oh dear,
maybe
is it called Stasi? The East German restaurant?
No, there's one. No, I saw a video on it, and then a friend's like, "Oh, maybe we should go there." I'm like, I think I can skip nostalgia about East German food. I think most East Germans do.
Wow.
So
there is a place that's just like a few feet away from where Checkpoint Charlie used to be, called Snack Point Charlie.
Oh my gosh.
Which is worth a visit. Be near Checkpoint Charlie anyway.
We went when I was traveling around on the geek cruises. We went to Berlin. I took my son, who was about 10, to see Checkpoint Charlie. I don't know if it really sunk in, but we bought a bit of the Berlin Wall, which I kept for him, and I gave him on his last birthday. I still don't think he understands what it is, but it was quite a trip, and it is something to see Checkpoint Charlie and the remains of where the Berlin Wall was, and of course the big Brandenburg Gates right there and everything. It was quite something to see.
Spent a lot of time in university studying German history, so most of my knowledge of Germany is pre and during World War II. I don't really know much about what it's like today, so it'll be fascinating to see Berlin, honestly.
Great city.
Like I'm 70 years old.
Yeah, I think you'll have Prague is amazing.
Prague, can't wait to
go to
Prague.
Old Town and see the clock, the 13th century clock that they blinded the clockmaker after he made it, so he should not make it for any other person on the hour.
Not cool.
Dancing people come out. It's an incredible thing to see. Incredible.
I'll go find the Golem of Prague also.
The Golem? Got to go see the Golem. Everybody,
Maybe.
The Golem, and then if you ever go to Brussels, you can see the mannequin piss, and you'll be done.
I've seen enough of the mannequin piss.
How much mannequin?
Also in the subways in New York.
There it is. Here we are at the beautiful Checkpoint Charlie's.
No, this is the best currywurst in Berlin.
I want to go. Yeah. Oh, Knopke's Imbiss.
Yeah, it's very
currywurst
food truck.
That's confusing. Is it a little bit of India in Germany, or
a lot of
I'm not
Turkish?
Really sure why they call it that.
It's fusion. It's fusion food.
It's curry powder. They have a lot of Turkish influence. The thing I'm looking for is Döner kebab. Is the big Berlin innovation. It's supposed to be very good there. So I'm.
But also currywurst is amazing.
Have a currywurst and a Döner kebab.
Yeah.
Get back to us.
If my arteries are last on my trip back, I will.
We do Twit every Sunday. Man, was this a fun one. I'm glad you were here for it. About 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, 2200 UTC. Usually starts about half an hour in, but if you get here early, you get to see all the pre-show stuff. After the fact, you can download a copy of every show we do on our website, twit.tv. You can get it on YouTube as well. There's a whole YouTube channel devoted to This Week in Tech. If you watch live, you should chat live at our IRC, or if you're a member of Club Twit, in our Discord. Club Twit members get all sorts of stuff, extra stuff. It's less than a blue check on Twitter, just $7 a month, but it really makes a big difference to us. It helps us out a lot. And it's one of the ways we were able to launch new shows. We do it in the club, including Hands on Windows with Paul Thurrott, Hands on Mac with Micah Sargent, the Untitled Linux Show with Jonathan Bennett, Stacy's Book Club, all the stuff we do, the GizFizz, thanks to club members. So we appreciate it. If you're not in the club, go to twit.tv/clubtwit. It's free, for instance, to join our Mastodon, but it's expensive. The Club Twit members help us with that. They help us with our forums as well. They're really the benefactors that make it possible for us to do so many things. We love doing what we're doing. I am not retiring. I'm just quitting radio. I plan to be here for a long time, but it's going to take the help of the club to do it. So twit.tv/clubtwit. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Another Twit is in the can.
This
Bye-bye.
is amazing.
Doing the twit. All right. Doing the twit, baby. Doing the twit. All right.
Yeah, I forgot to thank, and we'll add this to the show because Andy Carluccio is here. He is the event engineering manager at Zoom. And it was thanks to Andy and his help that we were able to finally get Zoom ISO working. And I don't know if you noticed this, but this has been the first time where there's no latency. Everybody can overlap. They could talk over each other. It's really been great. So thank you, Andy. He's in studio today making sure it all works. I really appreciate it. We'll be using Zoom ISO from now on. Yeah, yeah.